Chapter 629. Bows and crossbows are hidden, saddles and horses are hung. Hooves are torrential, angrily trampling Jin Chuan. Life is on the blade, soul is on the bottom, arrows are like a storm, wind is like a storm. Ask the enemy if they are afraid, their bodies are in the yellow sand, blood is spilled. Looking at the Zhangqiangua pagoda from afar, he sneered and flicked his hair. Perhaps it was because of the rain, but Kumuk had been in a bad mood for the past 2 days. Looking at the sky that was not completely clear after the rain, she always felt a chilly wind blowing, even if it was in the tent. In fact, he knew what he was worried about. He was afraid that he would follow in the footsteps of Tatatu. 20,000 people against 7,000 people, it did not seem to be a lot, but the other side only had a little more than 10,000 people. At that time, the Tang army was still in low morale and did not have much rest. At this time, the Tang army's morale was so high that his own army could not compare with it. Moreover, they hid and rested for such a long time. It was true that the general was the courage of the soldiers. It was true that the same soldiers became different after changing the general. His own army also had 20,000 people, and the logistics department of 6,000 people sent out did not lose too many people. But why did he not dare to completely follow the order to launch a battle line to kill? Was he afraid? Was he afraid of a 9-year-old little girl? Kimukahu was not surprised that the other side killed so many people on his side with such a small number of people. The most powerful generals in history were even more powerful than this. He could not understand how a 9-year-old girl could be like those famous generals. If she was on his side, he would feel that the little girl fought a battle pleasing to the eye, but she was not on his side. Reporting General, the scouts of the 1st and 2nd teams of the Wind Cavalry encountered the enemy and retreated. Only 21 people out of 300 escaped. Just as Camus and Ku, who were thinking about how to follow the order without losing too many soldiers, a messenger ran in from outside the tent and reported to them. Kimukahu did not seem to have any reaction after hearing it. He looked at the scenery outside the tent motionlessly. The messenger did not dare to disturb him and stood aside to wait. After a while, Kimukahu said, "No wonder I always felt a gust of cold wind. Turned out that I was targeted. It seems that the Tang army is ready to attack my army. Well, tell me, what kind of enemy did the 1st and 2nd teams of the Wind Cavalry encounter?" Reporting, the brothers who came back said that they encountered about 3,000 Tang soldiers. They were lightly armored and their arrows were like flying locusts. When they came face to face, a large number of brothers around fell. Fortunately, the road was muddy, so they managed to escape. The messenger was also worried. He was afraid of encountering the main force of the Tang army, and that little girl. Camus and Ku who began to ponder and muttered, 3,000 light cavalry. This means that they are the ones who ambushed the logistics. The main force of the Tang army is still on the mountain. Mud is good. The messenger listened attentively. He didn't know what to do with the mud, so he could only wait for the general's order. Pass down my order. The 6,000 men of the 8 battalions that were sent to reinforce Tadagaritu are to return immediately. The 6 battalions will split into 6 groups and spread out the distance between each other. We will search as we return. Gather all of our cavalrymen. Equip them with light armor and crossbows. Wait for orders. Find Sang Chi. Kamuku, who originally did not want to let the headquarters go up, but now that the enemy had their eyes on them, they had no choice but to go up, even if they knew who would be at a disadvantage. After the messenger left, Kamuku, who laughed sinisterly and muttered to himself, "Little girl, this time I'll let you know that not everyone can let you come and go as you please." Wang Wan, who had defeated nearly 300 Tufan soldiers, led her troops and left. She ran into a forest and started to get busy. Shui Yun flew down and told Zhang Yingshan the news on the mountain. She then flew away and continued to monitor the situation on the mountain. She also sent an order. Zhang Xiaobao took out the small pot on his back and lit the fire. He was busy making food for Wang Wan. He was only making food for her. Fighting a war was also very mentally taxing. She had to replenish her nutrients. He poured oil and slowly boiled the sugar. After a while, the sugar changed color and the fragrance floated out. The surrounding soldiers who were looking at them inhaled the fragrance. However, no one came forward. No one wanted to share the food. This was a meal for the general so that he could lead them to victory. Zhang Xiaobao took out pepper and a few other seasonings and stir-fried them in the pot. He looked at the cut meat at the side and sighed, It's not easy to get some pork here. I'll just make do with the wild pork. I've already marinated it with white pepper, starch and wine. The fragrant red braised meat needs to be cooked slowly. It will only taste good after 2 hours. Wang Wan leaned against a tree and rested while thinking about what the enemy would do. Occasionally, she would look at Xiao Bao who was making the red braised meat for her. She revealed a happy smile. During this period of time, Xiao Bao had taken the time to make good food for her. He would do whatever he was told to do. He never felt that he shouldn't listen to a woman just because he was a man. The surrounding soldiers were also envious of General Wang. Although men didn't cook much, the little young master's food was really delicious. Just by smelling it, it was fragrant. When they heard the people from the logistics camp calling him, it seemed that the little young master had a higher status at home. They didn't expect that he would not fight for power with General Wang, and would do whatever he was told to do. This kind of man was not easy to find. Yes, a woman like General Wang was also not easy to find. When the little young master was at home, would he be bullied by General Wang who could command him? As everyone was thinking, one person unconsciously said it. Zhang Xiaobao was watching the fire. When he heard this person, he turned his head and asked, "You haven't married yet?" This person was shocked and thought that he was doomed. Why didn't he guard his mouth and let the little young master hear it? He quickly shook his head and replied, "No, my family is poor. I can't talk about a wife." "Oh, don't be afraid of being poor. We are poor, but we are not poor. You fought with your life in Tubo. When you go back, you won't be poor anymore. For those who fought with my little madam, if they died, their families would double the compensation. If they were alive, they would also receive a large amount of money. When the time comes, I will help you find a wife. You have to work hard." Zhang Xiaobao said gently to this person. Okay. When this person thought that he would have a wife in the future, he immediately felt embarrassed. He lowered his head and blushed, but in his heart he felt that something was wrong. He had clearly offended the little young master. Why would the little young master be kind enough to find a wife for him? Zhang Xiaobao did not expose him. He looked at this person carefully and remembered this person. If this person could really go back alive, he would find a wife for him. The kind that was good at fighting. Let's see if this person would still badmouth him. Another person at the side joined in and said to Zhang Xiaobao, "Little young master, I already have a wife at home. I don't know if I can get a concubine when I go back. My cooking is not good at all." "I don't care if you get a concubine. If you have the ability, you can get one yourself. I will teach you how to sing a song, okay?" Zhang Xiaobao looked at this person and said, Okay. I will sing and you will remember. Maybe I will say goodbye. Won't come back again, do you understand? Do you understand? Maybe I'll fall down and never rise again. Do you still want to wait forever?" Zhang Xiaobao sang the song with a slightly altered melody to the man, and the people around him also listened. "Little young master, I thought about it and decided not to find a concubine. The one at home makes clothes that fit me very well. Everyone in the village praises her. They also say that I am very lucky. I won't marry. If you don't marry, then rest. You still have to kill enemies. Dignity needs to be exchanged with blood." After Zhang Xiaobao finished speaking, he added some firewood under the pot. He turned around and went to Wang Wan. He squatted down and massaged Wang Wan's head. At this time, Wang Wan was almost done thinking. While enjoying Zhang Xiaobao's massage, she said to Zhang Xiaobao, "Xiaobao, you sang really well just now. Why don't I change the military songs that I learned before and teach them? It can also improve their morale." "Okay, but the premise is that you have to make more money so that you can give enough money to support the army." In the end, the Tang dynasty couldn't raise an army and there was chaos. The soldiers listened to who is who. "Let's give the money to Shaoli and let him take it out. Then the army will listen to him. I like him more. He is very tough when dealing with the outside world. If we follow him, we can fight a few more wars. In the future, your family will eventually be separated. You can't always follow my family. You need to build your own family. Your younger brother will be supporting your family in the future. You need to have a good reputation so that you can protect him before he can start his own family. Zhang Xiaobao thought that most of the content of the lyrics was different from what it was now. For example, the love of the motherland. The people now listen to who raised them, especially the soldiers of the various regional commanders. This is not good. They need to centralize power. Money. Everything needs to be done with money. They also need to use Li Longji's name. Otherwise, they can start an uprising. Wang Wan also agreed with Zhang Xiaobao's suggestion. In the future, they will fight whoever is not satisfied. Weak countries don't have diplomacy. They need to occupy more land and get more resources first. You can decide how to earn money. This time I am prepared to cripple Tubo. I will make sure that they will not be able to recover within 10 years. Kamukahu's 6,000 men have retreated. They are retreating in different battalions. What is he trying to do? Zhang Xiaobao asked the information he just received when he heard about the war. What else can he do? Shuayun is not back yet. When it comes back, let it go to Kamukahu's side to take a look. He must be gathering the cavalry. He wants to use 6,000 men as bait to waste our horses and arrows. It is too obvious. He is smarter than Tadamatu. He knows how to use bait. He probably knows that we can only use light cavalry to fight against light cavalry. Wang Wan was very familiar with this kind of thing. There were many examples. For example, during the tank battle at Station 2, they could stop their own tanks from moving, and let the enemy constantly look for suitable places to attack to deplete the enemy's fuel. Would a tank without fuel still be a tank? Zhang Xiaobao was relieved when he heard that Wang Wan had a plan. Compared to Wang Wan, Kamukahu was still inexperienced. Chapter 630. Following Wang Wan's order, the 3,000 light cavalry split up and swept out like the wind. Out of the 6,000 Tibetan 8 battalions that acted as bait, other than the one in the front that was unscathed, the other 7 battalions were all attacked. The light cavalry took the upper hand and shot out a wave of arrows. They did not wait for the other party to react and just left. After a while they would come back again. Every time they would take away 30 to 50 lives. The 7 battalions of the Tibetan army were already beaten to the point that they could not take it anymore. At the same time they felt sullen. They recognized the arrows that were shot at them. They were all from the logistics department at the foot of the mountain. It was not a good feeling to shoot their own people with arrows. Each battalion only had 750 people. Seeing that their numbers were slowly being whittled down, they could not do anything. The light cavalry really came and went like the wind. If they were to run back to the main camp from here, they would probably die. Every battalion sent the little bit of cavalry they had back to report, hoping that the reinforcements would come sooner. In the end, the battalions simply stopped running and formed a defensive formation. It was very effective. Every time they were attacked, they did not lose too many people. Soon Kamukahu received the news. He was also reluctant to send 6,000 people to kill. However, if he did not do this and let 3,000 people escape, it would be more troublesome. If he killed 3,000 people, it would be 3,000 people. After hearing that all the 7 battalions were attacked, Kamukahu finally heaved a sigh of relief. He was afraid that the Tang army would hold back. Order all the cavalry to set off. Kill. Send someone to tell Sangchichi to hurry up. This time, I'm not only eyeing those 3,000 people, but also leaving a part of the main force of the Tang army in the mountains for me. Humph! Scheming against the unsuspecting. I want to see how big of a wave that last can still create. The messenger quickly passed down the order. Kamukahu put on his armor and prepared to meet Wang Wan personally, although he felt that it was embarrassing to put the lass in such a high position. The troops set off. Kamukahu gathered 4,000 light cavalry and rushed forward. They were prepared to attack the Tang army that had lost their horses and arrows. Kamukahu's team only had 5,000 people. As for the other 5,000 people, they had already been sent out by him. This time he wanted to give the Tang army a fierce blow. Beside Kamukahu, there was a person who was supposed to be in charge of the army. When he saw that all the soldiers in the headquarters had been mobilized, he worriedly said to Kamukahu, "General, that little girl Cuckoo is also not an ordinary person. Should we join forces with the other 2 troops? Or do you want someone to send a letter and recruit the 2,000 or so people from Tadashamatu on the mountain?" There's no need. Could it be that you want my Tubo 67,000 people to move out at the same time to capture a single girl and deal with her 10,000 people? The other two divisions can't possibly move against me either. That way I'll get the most credit, so how could they be willing to do it? The more than 2,000 people of Tata Kidu on the mountain had no use for them. They were already scared out of their wits. This little girl didn't know her limits. Did she really think that she was invincible just because she had a few pimples with Tata? If she was given another 10 years, she might be able to become a famous general of her generation. However, I won't give her this chance. Kumuku, who vetoed the suggestion of the person beside him. In fact, it wasn't that he didn't want to find other people to join forces with him. However, just like what he was thinking, other people wouldn't be so cooperative. They might even be waiting for him to return empty-handed. This time, the person beside him didn't say anything. He could only hope that the general's plan would succeed. However, he didn't know why, but he felt that something was wrong. If that little girl Cuckoo was really powerful, wouldn't she be able to see that the 6,000 people were a trap? The Tang army's light cavalry didn't care about what others thought. They listened to General Wang's orders and carried it out very seriously. Even if it consumed a lot of horsepower and arrows, they still persisted in attacking and harassing. Even if they could only kill 10 people at a time, they would shoot the moment they entered the shooting range. They definitely wouldn't give the enemy a chance to counterattack. By the time Kumuku, whose 4,000 light cavalry arrived, half of the 7 battalions had already been killed. Just like that, 2,600 people were killed. When the 4,000 light cavalry arrived, a loud and clear eagle cry sounded in the sky. The Tang army's light cavalry immediately began to retreat and meet up with Wang Wan and Zhang Xiaobao's group. They started to run towards the north. However, their speed was obviously not as fast as before. The horses' noses were constantly blowing out white gas. The 4,000 light cavalry who came with a purpose didn't care about their own injured people. They urged their horses to chase after them. Each one of them had their bows and arrows ready. When they were within the shooting range, they would shoot. This distance was not a normal distance. The other party's horses were still running forward. Furthermore, they were in the wind, so they had to be very close to them. The Tubo people's shooting range was not enough. However, the Tang army's shooting range was enough. Each of them continuously turned around and shot without aiming. They let the Tubo people completely understand how difficult it was to chase after the light cavalry. When the Tubo cavalry had more than 400 people, they finally caught up to the shooting range. Just as they were about to shoot, many ropes suddenly popped out from the ground in the middle of the group. The Tang cavalry in front of them also took out something from their pockets and threw it on the ground. It was a triangular nail-shaped wooden block that they made when they were resting in the forest. When the Tubo people's horses stepped on these wooden blocks, they couldn't run anymore. Although it wasn't as powerful as iron, it wasn't too bad. Those who were caught by the ropes directly jumped down from the horses or were pressed down by the horses. There was no way for them to escape. Half of the Tubo cavalry were directly taken down. The remaining half didn't need to chase after them. They were all carefully controlling their horses to walk the maze. At this time, a rain of spears suddenly shot out from the forest, followed by shouts of killing. Shui Yun shouted excitedly in the sky. It was very clever and didn't come down to do any sneak attacks. It was also afraid of being shot by the arrows. Perhaps it knew that it had completed a very important task and sent the 4,000 people here to prepare. The remaining Tubo cavalry knew that they were finished. Zhang Xiaobao and Wang Wan also thought so. They didn't turn back to continue attacking. They led their people to rest and prepare for the next battle. At this time, Sang Chichi was running with all his might with 5,000 light infantry. He had received the order to set off in advance. He bypassed the main battlefield and advanced towards the villages where the Tang army was hiding in the east. He wanted to ambush the main force of the Tang army that was retreating. He ran until he was almost out of breath, but he didn't dare to think about resting. Speed was the most important thing in war. If he didn't make it in time because of laziness, then he didn't need to live anymore. The position in the east was indeed good. He didn't see any Tang army scouts, nor did he find the bodies of his own people killed here. Sang Chichi felt that he was about to make a great contribution. But he didn't know that if he didn't run to the north and continued to go east, he would have found the 4,000 people of the Tang army that retreated to Pengzhou. Among them, there were more than 1,000 local people. With his 5,000 people, he could definitely easily take down these 4,000 people who didn't have much fighting power. After Zhang Xiaobao and Wang Wan rested for a while and recovered a lot of strength, most of the 4,000 pursuing cavalry had been dealt with. Only the slowest ones at the back were lucky enough to go back and report. Every dead person was replaced and the horses that could still be used were brought back. Of the 4,000 chasing horses, only 700 were still usable. The rest were finished. Zhang Xiaobao and Wang Wan led people to cut the horse meat. They also filled the first pile of water bags in the nearby river with water. They collected the bows and arrows of the Tubo people and distributed them to those who didn't have them. After all these things were done, Sang Qiqi's troops also ran into the village for a short rest. They were waiting for an ambush in a while. Wang Wan didn't give him a chance to rest. She led everyone in the direction of the village. When Shui Yun first found this group of people, she and Xiao Bao were frightened. They thought that this group of people went to chase after the retreating logisticians. Kamukahu didn't slow down with his 5,000 people. They had already arrived at the place where the 8 battalions were located. There were 6,000 people in the 8 battalions. Now there were only 3,000 who could still fight. More than 2,600 people died, and the rest were seriously injured. It could be said that the losses were heavy. Kamukahu would be lying if he said that he didn't feel bad. But when he thought that the cavalry in front of him had wiped out the enemy's cavalry, he and Sang Qiqi would work together to severely injure the rest of the Tang army. That would make up for the losses here. He believed that he could ask where the main force of the Tang army was when he caught the people of the light cavalry. After gathering the remnants of the 8 battalions, Kamukahu led the team and continued to move forward. He also asked everyone to run. This way, they could move faster and avoid the Tang army from escaping in advance. But what he waited for was not the news of the victory of the cavalry, but more than 100 cavalry who escaped. After a series of inquiries, Kamukahu gritted his teeth so hard that they were about to break. The main force of the Tang army actually appeared. They even cooperated with the light cavalry to destroy his cavalry. They even used tripping ropes. Was it a precaution in advance, or a plan to deal with his cavalry this time? At this time, Kamukahu was like Tatatu at that time. He had no idea. If it was the former, he could immediately lead people to kill. If it was the latter, should he chase? It turned out that not being able to guess the enemy's tactics on the battlefield was so uncomfortable. Chase no matter what, I have to see the main force of the Tang army. It's best to see what that little girl looks like. I have to figure it out. Kamyuk made up his mind. The group continued to run forward. After an hour, he saw the corpses of people and horses. Needless to say, they were killed by spears one after another. The blood gathered together and flowed into the river in the east, overflowing the pits left by the horses. When the Tubo people saw this scene, they felt a chill in their hearts. How ruthless a 9-year-old girl was. It was obvious that the people on the ground were the last ones to be stabbed. It was the same for the horses. None of them were left alive. In a more spacious area, someone even used something to write the mark of a pit. The blood was drawn in and formed words, Tubo words. Tubo plotted to destroy the Yangtze River embankment and directly killed 1655 people of Wangjiang in Suzhou. Today I ask you, Tubo, do you still dare to do it? Seeing such words, all the Tubo soldiers were speechless. They finally understood why the Zhang family sent out such a killing god. It turned out that it was to avenge the people who were killed by the spies they sent to Wangjiang and Suzhou. Wasn't this too vengeful? Something that happened so far away actually came to Tubo to look for it? Revenge for the smallest grievance. Ruthless, really ruthless. Now they finally knew how powerful the Zhang family and Wang family were. They would remember this name. Kamukahu could no longer describe his feelings. Was it fear or anger? Provocation, a blatant provocation. Being questioned by a 9-year-old girl using the blood of their own people in such a condescending manner. This was a challenge to a country with one person's ambition. No matter what he thought in his heart, no matter whether he answered or not, he was at a disadvantage and had no face left. Chase, I want to tear her apart with my own hands. Chase after her and fight it out. I want to see how they can escape. The anger in Kamukahu's heart was finally suppressed by fear. He was a general. If he could swallow this insult and let others threaten his own country, wouldn't he still be human? More than 7,000 Tubo soldiers also thought the same. If they retreated or stopped, wouldn't it be telling the 9-year-old girl that they didn't dare to do it? If that was really the case, they should just find a rope and hang themselves. It was a shame. There was no need to mention the grievance in their hearts. More than 7,000 people ran madly following the tracks. When they reached the front, they were all dumbfounded. The 5,000 people led by Sang Chi were being surrounded and shot by the 7,000 cavalry. From the looks of it, more than 1,000 people had already fallen. Kamukahu finally understood one thing. The Tang army that he was thinking about just now was prepared with ropes and specifically targeted him. Half of the bait he sent out was eaten. The 4,000 light cavalry could be said to be completely annihilated. Right now, this army that was supposed to be used for an ambush was found and killed by the other party. It was impossible for something like this to happen suddenly. It must have been planned by the other party. At this moment, the Tang army that was surrounding and killing suddenly stopped. A group of people came out from the group. In the front were 2 very cute children. When they were a certain distance away, the little girl immediately started to shout the Tubo language that she just learned. Kamukahu, right? Today, I killed your soldiers to take revenge for the people of Wangjiang. Let me ask you personally, do you still dare to do it? Tell me, do you dare? With a pew sound, 2 streaks of blood spurted out from Kamukahu's nose. His body swayed and fell to the side. Everything in front of him was pitch black. When the Tubo soldiers heard this, their eyes almost popped out of their sockets. This was too much of a bully. If they had a rich vocabulary like Zhang Xiaobao, they would definitely curse at the top of their lungs, "Fuck your mother," and then charge over to kill. However, they did not curse like that. They all cursed their own words and charged over without a care for their lives. Retreat, slowly wear them down. I don't believe it. When Wang Wan saw that the other party was charging, she turned her horse around and ran. The Tubo people did not care about the speed of the other party as they chased after them with all their might. In the end, without Kamu and Kuhu's command, the 7,000 Tubo people who came later and the remaining 2,500 Tubo people who were surrounded and shot down by Wang Wan's 7,000 cavalrymen. The method was very simple. Run in the direction of the wind and then charge at the place where the arrows were not lethal. Then, with the help of the wind and inertia, they would shoot arrows and not give the other party a chance to retaliate. Without Kamukahu's command, the Tubo soldiers chased with all their might. They were determined to stop the Tang army. When the Tubo soldiers had chased for more than 30 li, they were already out of strength. After many people were killed, Kamukahu, who was supported by others, woke up. When he saw the situation in front of him, he immediately ordered his troops to retreat and hide in the village. They formed a defensive line and were not allowed to attack. This battle lasted until night time. The Tubo soldiers were only left with around 6,000 people. The Tang army also ran out of arrows and piled up their horses. Only then did they retreat. Kamukahu entered a commoner's house and was in a daze. 20,000 people were plotted against by the other party step by step. They were only left with around 6,000 people. It was over. It was over for him. He clearly did not underestimate the enemy, and even made arrangements. How could he not be able to outsmart a little girl? Could it be that she was the reincarnation of a military god? With such a cute and obedient little face and such a rosy little mouth, why were the words that came out of her mouth so infuriating and her actions so ruthless? Kamukahu was not the only one who did not understand. The Tubo soldiers who felt that they had escaped a calamity would also dream of a little girl with a face full of smiles. She personally held a sword and looked at her brothers beside her one by one. After killing one, she smiled and asked if they dared to do it. As a result, countless people were frightened awake. Just as the Tubo soldiers were thinking that they had nothing to do for the night, a dozen people ran down from the mountain and finally found Kamukahu. They reported to Kamukahu, who was still unable to sleep. The 2,400 people who had been recruited on the mountain were attacked by the main force of the Tang army at night, and were completely annihilated. They were released and said that the main force was here. They wanted to pass a message to the general and ask if the Tubo soldiers still dared to come. Kamukahu fainted again. Perhaps it was because she had experienced it before. She woke up faster this time. The first thing she did when she woke up was to kill the people who came back from the mountain. Kamukahu, who was unable to sleep, was patrolling the temporary camp. At around 6 o'clock a.m., the sound of horse hooves could be heard. Countless fire arrows flew into the village. Night attack. The Tubo soldiers could only drag their tired bodies and prepare to face the enemy. In the end, the enemy shot dozens of people to death and burned down a bunch of houses before retreating. The Tubo soldiers continued to prepare to sleep. However, at around 5 o'clock a.m., the Tang army came again. Fire arrows flew and then retreated. Just like this, Wang Wan ordered her men to seize the time to rest. At the same time, she ordered people to take turns to harass the Tubo soldiers. Kamukahu clearly knew this tactic, but he could not think of any way to deal with it. If he did not do anything, the enemy would definitely see the opportunity and send a large force to suppress them. He could only go along with it. He hoped that the other two divisions would come to support him soon. He had already sent out a messenger and hoped that it would not be stopped. When the sky was about to brighten, the Tang army finally left and did not continue to harass them. At the same time, the other two divisions also used their fastest speed to send a message, telling them to hold on for one more day, and that they would come to support them. Kamukahu, who had relaxed, ordered a portion of his men to be on guard outside. He did not want to let the rest after the Tang army launched a sneak attack. In the end, an hour later, 3,000 Tang soldiers suddenly appeared in the village. They raised their swords and killed the Tubo soldiers who had just fallen asleep. At the same time, the Tang soldiers outside rushed back to attack from both inside and outside. When the sky was bright, the attack ended. Kamukahu was relatively lucky. He rode a horse and led his 300 personal guards to break out of the encirclement and escape. The remaining people became the offerings for Zhang Xiaobao and Wang Wan to worship the people of Wangjiang. The two of them brought all the Tang soldiers to temporarily build a sacrificial altar. They kowtowed 3 times and prayed to the Thousand-Bone Pagoda at Wangjiang in Suzhou. Following that, Wang Wan left behind some words and led everyone to the yellow sand in the north. When Kamukahu and the other two divisions of reinforcements rushed back, they saw that all of their men had died there. There was also a sacrificial altar, and there was also a line of words written with blood. To the souls of the people of Wangjiang, I ask you again, Tubo, do you dare to come again? The people who saw these words and the scene gave the 9-year-old Wang Wan a name, Demon Fiend. When the Demon Fiend was angry, red blood would flow for 1,000 miles. At the same time, they gathered the other two divisions of people to inform the other divisions behind them and chased after the yellow sand. They had to take revenge. Chapter 631. As Wang Wan and Zhang Xiaobao led the army north, the people of Pengzhou quickly learned of many things. Pengzhou's government army had urgently recruited 120,000 people. Anyone who was willing to join the army would be given a share. They pretended to be ready to attack Tubo at any time, but they restrained themselves. When the people in the various strongholds in Wing Prefecture heard that the child of this official, who was like a brother to them, was fighting with the Tubo people, they took out the little money they had just saved and insisted that Zhang Zhong buy food for the government soldiers so that they could go and rescue the child as soon as possible. In addition to money, the adult men in the various strongholds also requested that Zhang Zhong organize a logistics camp to go kill the enemy together. Now, the logistics camp's combat ability had been recognized by the local people as being more powerful than the vanguard. Zhang Zhong persuaded and refused, but he didn't dare to tell others the truth. Pengzhou's government army was just putting on a show. When Xiao Bao and Cuckoo returned, those who had to farm and those who had to have children would do so. It wasn't to the extent that ordinary people would go to war. Zhang Zhong's days were much better now. With the reputation that his son and daughter-in-law had made, the merchants who were originally hesitant to be invited happily came to Idyll to cooperate with them. They were afraid. The new information that the spies sent back from Tubo made them worry that Zhang Zhong's daughter-in-law would come back and find out that they didn't cooperate with Zhang Zhong. She would lead the troops to wipe them out. They now believed that the Zhang family and the Wang family were the type to seek revenge for the smallest grievance. Based on the abilities of Demon Fiend, They were certain that he didn't need to bring any powerful troops. The usual guards of the Zhang family and Wang family were enough. Wouldn't dealing with people like them be child's play? The pigeons flying from Idyll to the capital were clearly not enough. The capital had already sent 3 cages of pigeons in case of emergency. This time, Gao Lisher brought the news back during the morning court session. Li Longji even temporarily stopped the court session to wait for Gao Lisher to do something else. None of the officials in the court objected. Even LV Yenzhua, who had always been at odds with Zhang Zhong, remained silent. Everyone wanted to know if Xiao Bao and Cuckoo had returned, or if they were still hiding there waiting for an opportunity, or if they had been caught. Gao Lisher ran back and forth. This time he didn't have the time to take a look. He didn't know what was going on in front of him. As soon as he returned to the hall, he looked at Li Longji and waited for him to speak. Previously, Li Longji had slightly lost his composure in front of the 3 officials. This time, in order to avoid such a situation, he first took a few deep breaths to calm himself down before instructing Gao Lisher, "Read." Gao Lisher slowly opened the letter in his hand. After swallowing a mouthful of saliva to soothe his throat, he read, "This official by Go Yao Chongchen, the commander of the logistics camp in Idyll, Great General Cuckoo, after defeating 13,000 Tufan soldiers, hid in a few villages near the Duchuan River. He formed a group of 3,000 light cavalry and attacked Kumukahu's troops. Kumukahu led the troops to encircle and annihilate them. With 8 battalions of infantry as bait, 4,000 light cavalry attempted to devour them. Another 5,000 infantry hurriedly marched around the village, vowing to destroy the main force of the Tang army on the Jinchuan front line. Kumukahu personally led 5,000 officers and 4,000 light cavalry to hold the rear. One day later, 8 battalions of infantry successfully lured Cuckoo, exhausting his horses, dispersing his arrows, and exhausting his soldiers. When the 4,000 light cavalry arrived, Cuckoo's light cavalry was already exhausted. When he read this, Gao Lisher's hand trembled. His throat suddenly became dry. He didn't make a sound and looked down. The people in the court felt their hearts skip a beat. It was over. Li Longji, who had long been mentally prepared, still couldn't control himself. His expression changed as he angrily said, "Read." Yes. Only then did Gao Lisher realize that when he didn't make a sound and continued to read, his expression became a lot better. By this time Cuckoo had led the light cavalry to kill more than 2,600 of the 8 battalions of infantry. When they encountered the enemy's light cavalry, they ran with all their might, luring the Tufan's light cavalry to pursue them. Later on, they ambushed the 4,000 Tang army on the mountain, tripping the horses and throwing spears. When Kumukahu led 5,000 men to arrive, the 4,000 light cavalry were all gone. Then they drew blood on the ground, saying that the common people of Wangjiang and Shuzhou had died miserably. This disaster was attributed to Tufan. Would Tufan dare? Furious, Kumukahu led his troops to continue the pursuit. At this time, Cuckoo led 7,000 light cavalry to kill 5,000 Tufan troops who took a detour. In front of the 2 armies, they asked again if Tufan dared. Kumukahu was so angry that he fainted. He seized the opportunity to attack and kill, forcing Kumukahu's troops to enter the village and defend. In the middle of the night, they turned to the river and killed Kumukahu's more than 2,000 men. Then they attacked in batches throughout the night. At dawn, the 3,000 Tang warriors who had been lying in ambush in the tunnel under the village joined forces with Cuckoo's troops to attack from the inside and broke Kumukahu. Kumukahu took advantage of the chaos to escape and led the other 2 troops to rendezvous. Blood flowed like a river in the village, bodies everywhere. There was also a sacrificial altar, offering sacrifices to the common people of Wangjiang, asking again if Tufan dared. Tufan's 2 troops pursued again, pointing their swords to the yellow sand. Cuckoo was a demon. Someone wrote a poem, "Tender faces sweet and beautiful, laughing and talking slaughter the world. Corpses piled up like a river, asking June dared." The more Gao Lisher recited, the better his mood was, the faster he recited. After he finished reciting, he was thirsty and snatched the cup specially made by the Zhang family from Zhang Shua's hand. He unscrewed the lid and gulped down a mouthful of water. Zhang Shua did not have any intention to snatch the cup back. He was stunned for a moment before he said, Good kill, good question, let's see if Tufan still dared? According to what you said, Cuckoo and Xiao Bao have already led their men to kill more than 35,000 Tufan soldiers. If they could come back, they did not come back and instead led the 2 Tufan troops of 40,000 men to kill in the desert? The people who reacted nodded one after another. It seemed that Cuckoo had not killed enough. Li Longji also picked up the cup of tea beside him and drank it. He usually did not drink when he was in court, but now he was afraid that he would reveal it because of his agitation. He used this as a cover and hid his face behind the cup. However, his heart was in turmoil. He did not expect that it was indeed that little lass, Cuckoo, who was giving orders. This little lass was really capable, and her heart was really ruthless. She did not show any mercy when she killed people. He also had portraits of her and Xiao Bao here. These two were very good-looking children, especially when they smiled and showed 2 dimples. How could they kill until they vomited blood and corpses were everywhere and blood flowed like a river? How much hatred did this little lass have to become like this? The commoners of Wangjiang should be satisfied. In the future, if Zhang Zhong were to become an official somewhere, no one would dare to make a move against the commoners of that place. The Demonfian's reputation was built on human lives. Her delicate face was sweet and beautiful, and her laughter could slaughter the world. It was indeed so. Good, when she came back, he would not let her go out and raise her. When she grew up, wouldn't she be even more powerful? At that time, when there was a war elsewhere, if she really could not handle it, he would send her out. When Li Longji thought of this, he calmed down and passed the cup of water to the side. Wei Wei looked at all the civil and military officials in the imperial court with a smile, waiting for them to calm down. All the officials in the hall were also digesting the news that they received. It would be a lie to say that they were not excited. More than 35,000 Tubo people were killed, and the Tubo soldiers were toyed with. Especially when they were asked, it was truly too delightful. Of course, there was also one person who was feeling afraid while feeling happy for the current dynasty. That person was Yenzhua. He knew that he had done a lot of bad things behind the scenes. Although he had never succeeded, he had still done it. Today, he even said that the emperor gave Cuckoo and Xiao Bao too high an official position. If Cuckoo were to know about this? Alright, this matter has been settled. When the army returns in triumph, we will discuss the matter of the rewards. Where were we just now? Was it that Cuckoo and Xiao Bao were given too high an official position? Then what position should they be demoted to? Or was it like what LV Qing said, that the 2 children should not be given official positions? LV Qing say something else. At this moment, Li Longji opened his mouth and looked at LV Yenzhua. This official is here. LV Yenzhua had no choice but to stand up. He hated himself for saying this today. Wouldn't it be fine if he said this a day later? Wang Wan had made such a huge contribution. Even if she was given an official position, no one would be able to say anything. Otherwise, she would be sent to fight against the Tubo army. LV Yenzhua, who stood up, looked around and coughed, Your Majesty, what I mean is that we should wait for them to grow up before giving them official positions. They are still young. Young? A general by the side widened his eyes and asked. They are not young either. That Ganlua was proficient in politics at a young age, and Xianglu was a congsure at the age of 7. They are not young, but this official is afraid that I am the monarch of Lu country and the Qin king? That I can't protect Xiao Bao and Cuckoo? That the Tubo army is the one that killed Xianglu? And that Cuckoo can't return in the end? Li Longji's mouth fell again as he stared at LV Yenzhua. LV Yenzhua's heart tightened. He knew that he had said something wrong. If Cuckoo and Xiao Bao really didn't return, he would be the first to suffer. Wasn't he saying that the emperor was as useless as the monarch of Lu country, that he couldn't protect the capable people of the country? After Li Longji asked this question, he didn't wait for LV Yenzhua to explain and immediately ordered, issue an edict, order Jianan to mobilize the elite troops to attack Jinchuan and Gada City. Let me occupy those 2 cities. Why can't I protect the 2 children who fought for the country? Even if I have to use people to fill in the gaps, I will bring back Cuckoo and Xiao Bao. There is no need to discuss the matter of the 2 of them being mere empty officials. Is there anything else? Li Longji was really angry. Was he that kind of muddle-headed and incompetent emperor? He was waiting for Xiaobao and Cuckoo to help him more in the future. Not to mention that the two adorable children had an expert to teach them. Even if they were as monstrous as Xianglu, he still had to protect them. That was only for the monstrous talents of other countries, not for Great Tang. The officials began to discuss other matters. All of them tried their best to avoid the Zhang family and Wang family so as to avoid being implicated. LV Yinzhua also kept quiet. If he continued to find trouble, he would be the first one to be torn apart. The first thing that was sent out was the imperial edict. Li Longji was originally prepared to fight with the Tubo army. Originally he wanted Guotu to launch a sneak attack, and after the Tubo army attacked, Jianan would mobilize the army to launch a successful counterattack. Since a large portion of the Tubo army was destroyed and a portion was lured away, it was the perfect time to launch an attack. At the same time, it would make things easier for Cuckoo. He believed that Cuckoo would definitely be able to lead the troops to defeat the Tubo army and return victorious. He heard that the two children were good cooks, and perhaps he would have the opportunity to taste it personally. No, how could your majesty be wrong? Cuckoo isn't wrong either. This subject thinks that Cuckoo had Peng Zhou feign an attack because she was afraid that the generals leading the army would be at a disadvantage. After all, the Tufan cavalry was mobilized, so she had Falcon follow. She was worried about the other generals and didn't understand them well. She was worried that our court would suffer too many casualties. Does your majesty agree? LV Yinzhua continued to explain to avoid being misunderstood. Li Longji thought for a moment, then nodded and said yes. All the civil and military officials in the imperial court also admitted that they couldn't find a general as powerful as Cuckoo. There were generals who could win battles, but they couldn't find one who could kill so many enemies with so few casualties. It wasn't like in the past, when there were still many famous generals. Seeing that the emperor agreed, LV Yinzhua continued, however, our court can't always let Cuckoo lead the army every time there is a battle. Wouldn't our court have no one? Your majesty can send troops from Jianan circuit. At the same time, send 10,000 elite soldiers to follow Cuckoo's instructions. As for the deployment, Cuckoo is a famous general and will adjust accordingly. If your majesty agrees, this subject will personally go to Sanshui County to train the Falcon to coordinate with our court's march. This subject's neck was stiff last night and has already had someone check it. The effect wasn't good. This subject also wants to go to Day Hospital to have a look. In order to ease the atmosphere, LV Yinzhua shook his head. He really felt that he couldn't move. All the officials in the imperial court laughed. Even Li Longji didn't have a sullen expression like before. In that case, Minister LV will be tired from the journey. Li Longji also wanted to see if Cuckoo could immediately adjust according to the layout. In his mind, Wang Wan was already a famous general. A famous general naturally understood that the situation was not constant, and the water was impermanent. In any case, the danger would be smaller if the troops were sent out. Even if the matter was settled, LV Yinzhua found an opportunity to ease the situation. Of course, he wouldn't take a carriage. There was a boat, and the river wasn't frozen yet. Wang Wan was still leading people to escape. This time she was satisfied. After killing so many people, when the news spread to Shuzhou, the people there would definitely cry and then be very happy to avenge them. The message from the eagle was written by Zhang Xiaobao. He also had his own arrangements. Wang Wan didn't expect Zhang Xiaobao to have such a plan on the way to Idyll. Riding on the horse, she said to Zhang Xiaobao, "Xiaobao, I found that you are really suitable for logistics. You have arranged everything that you can think of and that might happen. Otherwise, you would have to do it now. I will reward you by making me red braised pork tonight." Women are starting to rebel when they have the ability, right? You want to reward me by making you food? Good idea. There are still 40,000 people behind us. I don't want to be buried in the sand. Zhang Xiaobao was very happy. He didn't have nightmares at night because of killing too many people. Wasn't it just a few people dying? His hands were also covered in blood. In the future, when he became a local official, who would dare to use the people to threaten him? The surrounding soldiers were also more relaxed. Although close to 1,000 people had died in this battle, they had still fought to show their might. What was the use of being a soldier if they didn't fight? Only when they killed their enemies until they became obedient and didn't dare to look for trouble would they be able to live a stable life. A peaceful life was built with their lives. Just like the song that General Cuckoo taught, "You don't want to be a soldier, I don't want to be a soldier. Whoever comes will protect the motherland, who will protect the home." Which country was afraid of death? Which country's people were waiting to be bullied? Wang didn't care about what Zhang Xiaobao said. In any case, the food she ate had to be prepared by Xiaobao. Others suffered when they were fighting, but her food was not bad. She made a handful of wild vegetables, and Xiaobao could wrap them into a box and fry them. After hearing Zhang Xiaobao mention the arrangements, Wang was not worried. This was her field of expertise. She said, "Take it slow. There are still a few days before we enter the desert. They won't dare to send light cavalry." "That's good. I was worried about the lack of horses. All in all, we only have a little more than 8,000 horses. There are still 1,000 people who don't have horses to ride and take turns to run on the ground. Their speed is a drag and they are tired. I know what they are thinking. They want to force us into the desert. They will block us outside and look for an opportunity to destroy us. This time, I will let them know that our army is a strong army that can fight in all weather and all terrain. Be prepared. Hunt more prey. I have use for it." Wang did what she said. She sent people to see if there were any wild beasts around. If they encountered some small village, the poultry and livestock raised by the people were also fine. If they used weapons to exchange with the people would be very willing. The two groups following behind did think so. They didn't dare to send cavalry to chase and kill. It was easy to be schemed against. But it was easier to drive the Tang army into the desert. They would see what they could do when the time came. Kamu had no right to make a decision. In fact, according to his idea, they should fight now. Even if the Tang army died, it was still a little bit. How could 40,000 people lose to less than 10,000 Tang soldiers? But the army belonged to others. He couldn't command it. He was only allowed to go with the troops because they pitted him. Kamu gathered his remaining soldiers. In total, there were less than 1,000 people. He barely managed to form a battalion. Half of them were injured. They were given to him by the two groups. It turned out that Tatatata's soldiers were taken in. Otherwise, he wouldn't even be able to form a battalion. After following behind for 2 days, Kamu had enough rest. As long as he didn't think about the deaths of so many of his men, he would be like a normal person. He always wanted to take revenge for the deaths of so many of his men. Seeing that the Tang army in front was not moving fast, he felt that this was an opportunity. Hence he found the leader of the other group, Lufutuda. He discussed with Lufutuda about borrowing some soldiers. He didn't need a lot. He just needed 3,000 cavalry. He brought his men and ran to the front to attack. If he did this, at least the Tang army's deployment would be disrupted. Otherwise, why would the Tang army be walking slowly in front of them? Could it be that he and his men were so scared that they didn't have the courage to go up against the 9,000 soldiers? After Lufutuda heard Kamu idea, he decisively rejected it. He meant that Kamu, how dare you say such a thing? Don't you know how your own soldiers are being taken care of? Kamu returned to his tent gloomily. Looking at the 700 soldiers in the battalion, he shook his head. He could only give up on this idea. He felt like he had lost an opportunity, but Lufutuda was tempted. The reason he rejected Kamu was because he didn't want Kamu to succeed. If that happened, Kamu would be able to make up for his loss. That wouldn't do. The reason why he let Kamu follow was because he had fought with the Tang army before. Even if he lost, he would still understand the Tang army in some aspects. It didn't mention who was scheming, who didn't cooperate, or what kind of decree the imperial court had sent. It seemed very normal. Wang was puzzled. What was in the letter that made Zhang Xiaobao do such a scheming action? After waiting for a while, Wang saw that Zhang Xiaobao was still meditating. Finally, she couldn't help but ask, "Xiaobao, are you in trouble? You've never thought about things for such a long time before." Zhang Xiaobao shook his head, took the letter, and read it from beginning to end. He threw it aside and said, "Troublesome, it's really troublesome. If I were at home it would be easier. I ran so far away and can't do it at any time. Say, in an economic war, how slow is slow and how fast is fast. When it's slow, it can be done for a year and slowly plan. When it's fast, it's a race against time. If it's slow, it can't be done. If it's a step late, it can't be done. Isn't this troublesome? I asked you to read the letter. Did the letter say that it's an economic war? Wang took the letter and read it carefully. There was nothing wrong with it. It was normal for the price of grain to rise. Now that the autumn harvest was coming, it was the time for the last round of price increases. Then the price would drop a lot. Zhang Xiaobao nodded and said, "Yes, an economic war, and it's coming fiercely. If I'm not wrong, it must be someone from Tubo behind the scenes. He's a master. Why haven't I heard of such a talent in Tubo? If I were in Wing Prefecture now, I wouldn't be afraid. Can he overturn the heavens? Why can't I see it?" Wang didn't doubt Zhang Xiaobao's judgment. When a person like Xiaobao operated, it was like fighting a war. It was hard to predict, but it was hard to figure out what was wrong with the ordinary information in the letter. After asking, she saw Zhang Xiaobao's eyes looking at the night sky in a daze. Wang thought about it again, but she still couldn't figure it out. She nudged Zhang Xiaobao and asked, "Don't tell me that's your perception?" "Perception? Oh, perception is sometimes right and sometimes wrong. I believe in perception, but I believe in data analysis more. Let me tell you. Look, the price of grain has risen. It's normal. It's the last price increase before the autumn harvest, and then it should fall. Fortunately, we can make a profit in the process and buy the farmer's grain at a low price. The price of hemp has risen. It's normal. Hemp is also a crop and it's spread. Ordinary people don't see any problems. After all, my father's reputation is there. Looking at it separately, everything is under control, but it's not normal when they are put together. In the simplest way, the oil companies in our country are carrying out a unified rectification in order to obtain greater profits in the future, so as to improve the oil refining technology and standardize it. What do you think the consequences will be?" Zhang Xiaobao asked Wang after analyzing a little. "Consequences? Of course, the price of refined oil will rise. But this behavior is wrong. The rectification can't be unified. It needs to be done in batches. Otherwise, it will have a bad impact on society. Isn't it obvious that they are shouting at the state?" Wang followed Zhang Xiaobao's train of thought. "That's right. The reason why the oil companies are doing this must be because of the political faction behind them, especially when they're about to change industries. This is because it doesn't just affect refined oil, but also the overall economic environment of a society. The stability of prices is supported by productivity and the transportation industry. The unified rectification of the oil companies is using their own losses to threaten a certain faction. What if they restrict electricity? The transportation costs increase, and the energy consumption increase. Just these two factors at the same time can cause the price of social goods to rise by more than 40%. Zhang Xiaobao analyzed the things that might happen to him and Wang at that time, and then said, "What I want to say now is what my father wrote in the letter. Our plan to rearing livestock includes livestock, but only pigs. The rearing of sheep and cows is still under experiment. My father said in the letter that the price of livestock and poultry will rise, and so will the price of grain and hemp. The problem lies in my father's words. Fortunately, my family bought a lot of mules in advance. Tell me, how do we rearing mules? Mules can indeed give birth occasionally, but normal people can't use mules for rearing mules, right?" Wang nodded. "Indeed, who would raise mules for? Could it be that they were not preparing to give birth? If it's according to what you said, it's really the Tibetans behind the scenes. They want to attack our transportation industry, and through this make the price of goods in Jianan City rise, and make the people unable to make a living?" Wang shivered. She knew the power of economic warfare. For example, Zimbabwe in the past and the Soviet Union before that. No, if that's the case, I really don't care. What's there to attack in the transportation industry? We don't have trains, cars, or planes here. We don't need animals to pull the goods. Don't we still have boats to transport them by water? Zhang Xiaobao shook his head. When Wang heard Zhang Xiaobao's words, she suddenly realized that it was impossible to do things that were not in her field. When it came to war, Xiaobao could only think of ways to replenish his supplies. He was unable to give timely and reasonable commands, and he could not come up with too many tactical arrangements. But when it came to economics, it was definitely Xiao Bao's world. When a letter was sent over, he could see the traces of war in it with just a glance. Then tell me quickly, what are they trying to do? Do you care about it now? Wang Wan humbly leaned beside Zhang Xiaobao and asked with a smile. She understood that whoever was in the field would speak, but she did not believe that Xiaobao was really afraid. As expected, Zhang Xiaobao laughed contemptuously and said, "Him? I'm just too far away, and it's not convenient for me to give commands. He dares to use such petty tricks on me? When I tried to play tricks, he would have already died." Don't laugh. Cuckoo, shouldn't we be more proactive? The best would be to launch a sneak attack on the logistics of the Tibetan army. The Tibetans have no money, they can't afford to fight. If my guess is correct, the imperial court must have made a new move, and it's bigger than what we thought. At the very least, the move in Pengzhou is obvious. War is a battle of money. The Tibetans don't want to lose. Some of them have already noticed that something is wrong, so they want to make money. The purpose of the acquisition is not to restrict us, but to develop them. That's why I said that the person behind the scenes is not bad. He can be considered a little talent. What a pity, Sai. I know what you want to say. You want to say that it's a pity that we met you, so stop bragging. Come, I'll give you a flatbread, I'll eat less. The taste of your flatbread is not bad. It's just that it's not chewy. Wang Wan leaned on Zhang Xiaobao and rolled a flatbread for him, then gave it to him and said, "It's broken, how do you want me to make it chewy? It's fine if you give me some big rice noodles, or I'll make you steamed noodles tomorrow. After fermenting, it's better than the steamed noodles now. And let's do it like that, I'll make soup dumplings for you." Zhang Xiaobao took a bite of the flatbread. It was indeed like what Wang Wan said, the taste was not good. Chapter 633. Wang Wan kept feeding Zhang Xiaobao the pancake until Zhang Xiaobao opened his mouth and said, "Tubo realized that they don't have enough money and can't afford to fight, but they don't want to admit defeat. This is mainly because of you. Don't think that you only led 10,000 people back and forth to fight, but Tubo mobilized a lot of people. They can't keep up with the logistics. They are also waiting for the autumn harvest, but they can't not come after us. At the same time, they have to guard against the main forces of the Tang army. If it was in the past, they should be the ones to collect more taxes from the people of their own country. But this time, a person who thinks that he is powerful suddenly appeared, so they came up with a plan. If I were to name this plan, it would be a contract selling operation. In fact, it is almost the same as cash flow. As long as there is a sum of money, they can use this money to buy assets such as houses or food. When they are buying, they can discuss and give a portion of it. When they don't have any other money, they don't want this money. Then, through the operation, they can change this agreement slightly and be able to borrow money from other banks. If it were me, I would sign 2 contracts. One is the successful transaction contract, and the other is the subsequent repayment contract. It is just to trick people into trusting me. I think that person is doing the same unless he has more money to operate. Then what is the use of this kind of false proof of assets? It can be exchanged for more cash. Wang Wan still understood this point. Zhang Xiaobao nodded and said, "Yes, it is to use this to exchange for money, and then use this money to buy local food and livestock, causing the price of everything to increase. But he shouldn't have bought mules. Does he think that everyone is a fool? Does he think that I am a decoration? The problem now is, how many things has he bought and how much money has he used to pawn these things? The more money he has, the more food and livestock he will buy during the autumn harvest. It will create a situation where the price of goods doesn't fall even though it is the autumn harvest. How can it not fall? How much can he buy during the autumn harvest?" Wang Wan agreed with Zhang Xiaobao's analysis but did not agree with the latter part. How could it fall back? Businessmen pursue profit. How many businessmen can see through such a plan? When the price of goods in a certain region increased, they would not think of suppressing it. They would work together. That person from Tubo would not say that he was from Tubo. If he wanted the merchants from Great Tang to cooperate, he would look for relevant merchants to cooperate. The simplest way to put it was that when foreign hot money was hyping up the domestic financial market, how many businessmen in the country could fight to the death? How could there not be domestic funds adding fuel to the fire? I'm sure that after the autumn harvest, The price of grain will rise instead of falling. Moreover, it will give people the impression that the price will continue to rise. As long as the people can still live, they will cherish the grain and not sell it. The Tubo people will increase the hype and achieve their goal. Their goal is, that's to sell the grain from Tubo, as well as the livestock and poultry from Tubo. Once he sells them all, he won't want the money he invested in them anymore. Everything will turn into bubbles. Many merchants from Great Tang who do the same will suffer losses. Great Tang's commoners who don't grow grain will suffer losses. Yes, those who grow grain will also suffer losses. The merchants have two choices. One is to raise money to continue raising the price of goods. The other is to sell at a loss. If they choose the former, it is easy for trouble to happen. Some of the citizens do not have grain and it will cause social unrest. If they choose the latter, once they sell their grain, the price of all the goods will fall again and again. Then, the Tubo people will be able to buy them at a very low price. Am I right? Wang Wan did not wait for Zhang Xiaobao to finish his words and analyzed. Yes, that is the case. However, this is not the final goal. It is not a peaceful time now, and we can only rely on pure economic means. What do you think will happen when the Tubo people suddenly attack Great Tang? Zhang Xiaobao continued. Yes, it will make things very difficult for little Li. After all, the cost of transporting grain from outside is much higher than the value of the grain itself. If transportation is still not possible, then I know what to do. The military is to serve politics. Wang Wan had completely thought it through. She picked up the binoculars and went out to look at the terrain. Zhang Xiaobao did not care about Wang Wan. He held his chin and knocked on his face. After thinking for an hour, he muttered to himself, since that is the case, then let's let the Tubo people see what an all-around war is. Let them understand that there is no distinction between the front line and the rear. Let's use both the military and the economy together. After muttering to himself, Zhang Xiaobao started to write something. When dawn came, he asked Shui Yun to send it to Pengzhou. Pengzhou still looked like they were ready to go to war. They did not know that someone was fighting an economic war with them. Even Zhang Zhong did not expect that a letter he wrote would decide someone else's fate. Until 2 days later, when a horse that was about to die of exhaustion rushed over, Zhang Zhong saw the news that was delivered and realized how great of a thing he had done. He wrote a letter that had a huge impact on the current situation. After changing his handwriting and copying it again, Zhang Zhong sent the letter to Old Man Pai and the other two. He immediately went to make arrangements. Could it be that there was no way? He really didn't want to believe that the experts of the Zhang family couldn't come up with a countermeasure. How was that possible? If there was really no countermeasure, what was the point of analyzing? Thinking about the experts of the Zhang family, Yao Chong said to Old Man Pai and Old Man Chong, why don't we ask Zhang Zhong and see what kind of countermeasure he can come up with? Yes, ask Zhang Zhong. As long as Zhang Zhong comes up with a countermeasure, it will be the expert's countermeasure. Old Man Chong agreed. Old Man Pai started to write a letter. I have to tell this to the emperor and see if the imperial court can come up with a countermeasure. Just as the three old men were preparing to send a letter to the capital, Zhang Zhong's memorial was sent out. It was also a pigeon, but this time it was from his family and not Old Man Chang's. Zhang Zhong really hoped to have an eagle like Shui Yun. He didn't need to waste pigeons. Shui Yun only needed to let it remember what sign was placed in a place and it could fly over and back by itself. Pigeons couldn't. Once they flew over, they would be gone. They needed to be put back in a cage. Wherever the pigeon nest was, the pigeon would fly there. However, there was only one Shui Yun. It was a true companion. It could send letters, monitor the enemy, and cooperate to kill the enemy. There were more than 100 eagles in Sanshui County, but none of them could catch up to Shui Yun. Now Shui Yun definitely couldn't be brought back. Without Shui Yun, his daughter-in-law would definitely feel very uncomfortable. By the time Old Man Pai's letter was sent out, Zhang Zhong's pigeon had already left for a long time. This time Zhang Zhong followed his son's idea and exposed his son. However, he used a test story to cover up the expert of the Zhang family. When Zhang Zhong was waiting for the merchants to arrive, Old Man Pai and the other two arrived first. Just like what was said in the letter, as long as he waited, they would come over and ask. Then they would cooperate with him. It was indeed correct. Yongcheng, why do I feel that the tea we drank last time tasted wrong? Don't tell me you used other teas to make up the numbers? Old Man Pai spoke as soon as he saw Zhang Zhong. Zhang Zhong thought to himself, you can keep pretending. My son already mentioned that you would come over. He even summarized the words he said at the beginning. One of them was to mention the tea leaves first. Fortunately, he didn't mention fishing. So it's Master Bai. How can the tea be bad? How about this? I'll go and brew the tea now. If I find that it's different from yours, you can take my tea away. That way it can't be bad, right? Zhang Zhong also learned to be tactful and followed along. Old Man Pai nodded. When he saw Zhang Zhong go to get the tea set, he didn't wait for Zhang Zhong to brew the tea and said, drinking tea requires one to be in harmony with the mood and environment. The environment here is not good. Then should we go to the river? At this time the riverside is not bad. Some of the grass is yellow, while others are green, Zhang Zhong probed. Yes, that's right. Look, I even brought the fishing rod. Old Man Pai immediately followed along with Zhang Zhong's words. When he was speaking, his follower came over and showed the fishing rod to Zhang Zhong. When Zhang Zhong saw the fishing rod, he felt sad for Tubo, who wanted to fight an economic war. This is my son. Not only did he see the economic war, but he also had countermeasures. He could even predict Bai Go's reaction in advance and had a follow-up response. No matter how powerful Tubo is, can you compare to my son's finger? Yes, according to my son's words, I can't beat you to death. This is a true plan of mine. He can predict the enemy first. Plus, he has a daughter-in-law who is good at fighting. It will be easy in the future. Seeing that Old Man Pai's people took out the fishing rod, Zhang Zhong was not surprised. He also took out a set of fishing equipment from the table beside him and said to Bai Go with a smile, if Master Bai didn't come, I was going to go fishing too. Let's go together. Bring the tea set and go together. I've already prepared the bait. It's enough for 4 people. Therefore, while Old Man Pai and the others were surprised that Zhang Zhong also wanted to go fishing, the 4 of them went to the riverside outside the city. The weather was not bad today. It was not cloudy and there was no fog. There was a group of children playing upstream. The 4 of them had different thoughts, so they didn't care if the child would affect the fish. Everyone was just fishing for the fish. Zhang Zhong divided the bait and casually threw out the fishing rod. He did not expect any fish to take the bait. He was fishing when he had nothing to do. If he wanted to eat fish, he would just use the net. He still had many things to do. If it was not to learn this kind of special method, he would not have come. Her son and daughter-in-law had said that not all business had to be done in the office. Sometimes there were more business to be done at the wine table, tea table, card game, and all kinds of leisure and entertainment activities than in a proper place. It was the same even if they went to the brothel together. Of course, he did not want to think about it. He could not do anything to let Xiao down. Besides, his son would not agree. Even if he really found a brothel, he could not expect to be accompanied by a woman. Last time he was forced to go there. In the end, there was no woman accompanying him. A group of men came out. That time he saw his son's methods. When he came back, his son looked at him differently. He was wronged. He did not want to find a woman. Even if there was a woman accompanying him, he would not do anything to let Xiao down. Looking at his son's regretful and disappointed eyes, he felt that the sky was dark at that time. Zhang Zhong left behind a sequela. Whenever he was about to talk about business with someone else, he would remember what happened in the past. That one time was enough. If anyone fucking dragged him to the brothel again, he would fall out with that person. This was because he did not have a woman. If his son could not take care of himself, and a woman came out, how many people would die? Whoever dragged him should go and make arrangements for his funeral. Zhang Zhong's thoughts flew away while he was fishing. Old Man Pai changed the bait a few times, but he still did not catch anything. Thus he said to Zhang Zhong, Yongcheng, I just realized that fishing is also a skill. You know that the fish are in the water, and you also know that the fish need to eat, but sometimes you are not in a hurry to catch the fish. Just now I was in a hurry, so the fish did not eat the bait. Don't you think so? Zhang Zhong also put away his fishing rod and changed the bait. When he heard Old Man Pai's words, he glanced over and thought to himself, sure enough, my son was right. This old man likes to play with people when he is fishing. Lord Bai can actually see the skill in fishing. I admire you. I don't know how to fish. I just remembered today. I had nothing to do, so I asked someone to prepare a fishing rod. Maybe it's because the fishing rod is not good. I am not sure. Zhang Zhong followed the steps written by his son. The small book also included this. According to his son, it was because he had been in contact with the fish for a long time and was familiar with it. It was a part of psychology. Old Man Pai waved his hand. Rather than saying that the fishing rod is not good, how can the fishing rod of the Zhang family not be good? Then you won't be able to find a good fishing rod in this world. To put it bluntly, only your father-in-law can come up with a few ideas in this area. It's a pity that you can't go and take a look like him. He hasn't been doing too well recently. When Zhang Zhong heard Old Man Pai mention his father-in-law, there was no longer any hatred in his heart. If there was anything to hate, it would be his own lack of ability. Which father would be willing to give his daughter to a man who was nothing? If Xiao Bao was bad, would the Wang family have let Cuckoo stay in their home? Thus, he said, Lord Taishan is indeed quite free. When Xiao Bao and Cuckoo come back, let them go and take a look. Then bring along Xiao Bao and Cuckoo. Xiao Bao and Cuckoo are sensible and won't cause trouble. That's good. This old man has a long tongue. Let me say something. After all, we are a family. The knowledge of fishing is easy to learn, but the knowledge of fishing is not easy to learn. Between people, just like between a man and a fish, there is always the existence of benefits. Or to put it bluntly, it is called seducing each other. Don't you think so? Old Man Pai then changed the topic to fishing. Yes, after hearing what Lord Bai said, it's really like that. Zhang Zhong didn't have a script now. His son didn't expect to mention this matter either. Then Yongcheng, what do you think about the economy? Is it the same as fishing? For example, if someone from Tubo wants to do something in this area, do you think he's a fish or a fisherman? Old Man Pai put the bait and threw the hook in. Of course he's a fish. No matter how good Tubo's economic warfare is, it still depends on who the opponent is. It's still too early to be a fisherman. He has to learn. Give him 10 years and it's already not bad if he can roughly learn it. Does he really think that he is so free in the water and can hide behind other fish to eat the bait? Lord Bai, don't worry. Not all fish are so smart. It's just that it takes a lot of effort for one person to fish. If it's a fish in the water, Lord Bai, Lord Yao, and Uncle Zhang will fish together. Then it will be easy. Zhang Zhong was relieved and finally returned to a normal topic. Chapter 634. He rides a bamboo horse, but when he approaches, he falls headfirst. In the courtyard where they lived together, the two young people played without suspicion. When Zhang Zhong accompanied Old Man Pai and the other two to fish, Wang Wan's younger brother rode a bamboo stick and imitated his sister's cavalry. When Xiaobei tied one end of the rope to a rock and held the other end in his hand, he fell. His forehead was bruised and he cried loudly. Xiaobei squatted innocently at the side and said that those who surrendered would not be killed. Wang Wan's younger brother wiped his tears and shook his head. Liar! Those who surrender will die even faster. Xiaobei's group of children caused quite a commotion. The children in the stronghold in Idyll had already split into groups and started fighting. They took turns to be the Tufan and Tang soldiers. Usually the Tang soldiers won. If the Tufan army won, they would have to start all over again until they were defeated. How could the Tufan army win? This kind of game originally existed, but now it had a clear position. It was not the officials catching the thieves, but the Tang army fighting against the Tufan army. The commoners did not care about how the children in their homes made a ruckus. As long as they did not cause trouble and played with the other children, it was fine. Occasionally, when they were happy, they would tell the children what they heard about the battle. They would exaggerate and embellish the story. Even the storytelling style used by Zhang Xiaobao and Wang Wan in the Little Pear Garden in Huayuan County was copied and told in restaurants and tea shops. The commoners were also willing to listen. Even if they had heard it many times, even if the versions were different, they would still listen attentively and feel comfortable. Gradually, it formed a trend of the whole people resisting the Tufan army. In the past, Blind Huang brought along a granddaughter to sing poems for others to make a living. Every time he raised a granddaughter, he would find a decent person for his granddaughter to marry. After that, he would find another granddaughter in a desolate place to teach her how to sing. In the past 20 years, he had already raised 3 granddaughters. Just as he was preparing to find another granddaughter to sing and earn money, he suddenly discovered the profession of storytelling. He felt that he could also learn how to earn some money. After learning for 2 years with the knowledge of traveling extensively, he really did learn it. Because there were too many storytellers in the capital, there were only a few jokes that he could tell. Blind Huang, who was determined to find more opportunities, came all the way from the capital to Jianan Circuit. As he walked, he told jokes, and he really did manage to save up some money. After arriving at this place, he found that there were indeed many stories that he could tell. After inquiring with the commoners who knew the general situation for a few days, he made up his own stories. Narrowing his eyes, he found the Yishui city at the intersection of the Great River and the Yishui River. In the city there was a restaurant called the Linjiang Restaurant. It was 3 stories high and took up 10 zhang of the street. It was not small, and it was bustling with the noise of carriages and horses. The waiters in charge of welcoming customers were coming in and out of the restaurant. With just a glance, one could tell that the business was good. It was a good place. Blind Huang pondered for a while and decided to tell his stories at this Linjiang restaurant. He rolled his eyes, trying his best to show the whites of his eyes. The stick in his hand was now in front of him, and he slowly walked in. He was secretly worried that the restaurant would not let him in. In the past, he had encountered many situations where he was chased out. However, this restaurant had its own style. It did not matter if you were walking, riding a horse, or sitting in a carriage. It did not matter if you were wearing a brocade robe or a hemp garment. Once you entered, you were a guest. Blind Huang had not even entered the restaurant. He was just walking in when a waiter came over to help him. He looked around and saw that there were no other customers. He shouted for someone to enter the restaurant and arranged for him to stand near the door. When it was time to leave, it would be convenient for him to stand at the side and wait for someone to order something. Usually, the ordinary people who came here would finish their noodles or get a plate of salted beans and a bowl of the worst wine. The waiter felt that this old man was the same. It was impossible that he would go to the 3rd floor and order some exotic delicacies. Blind Huang did not plan to spend money to eat here. No matter what, it was more expensive than other small stalls. It did not matter if the food was good or not. It was fine as long as it could fill his stomach. However, if he did not order anything, what would happen if he was chased out? He could only choose the cheap things. He asked for a plate of salted beans and asked for tea. He did not order anything, meaning that he only wanted to eat a plate of salted beans. The waiter did not care. Even if a plate of salted beans was not enough to buy the tea, he still served it. This tea was not good tea. If one wanted to drink good tea, they had to order something else, the kind that cost money. He also took half a head of garlic and placed it on the table. Eating garlic was a common practice. Many people asked if there was any garlic when they entered. If there was, they would eat it. Blind Huang was a little flattered. He didn't expect that Linjiang restaurant would be able to do business to such an extent. It was almost on par with Shuiyun restaurant in Sanshui County. She held the swallow ring saber in front of her and shouted angrily, "Hey! Tubo bullied our great Tang because we have no people. Men, gather the troops and follow this general to kill." That is truly the sound of iron hooves suppressing the border. If we don't kill Tubo, we swear we won't return. At this point, Blind Huang paused. No one cheered. They were all waiting for him to continue talking about how Cuckoo killed the enemy. Although the crowd had already heard many versions of the story, they still wanted to hear more. This was especially true for this storyteller. He seemed to be even better at telling the story. Blind Huang continued, that Guotu was originally a valiant general, but unfortunately, he encountered the famous Tubo general. Attack Guotu had been beaten until he was at his wits' end. He was about to lead the remaining soldiers to fight to the death with the Tubo army, staining the battlefield red with blood. Suddenly a troop of elite cavalry appeared from the direction of the Great Tang. These elite cavalry trod on one side of the battlefield and looked in another direction. Their spears were like a forest. Their sabers were held horizontally in front of them. They advanced like the wind and struck like thunder. As the saying goes, the general is the soldier's courage. The soldier is the general's soul. How could good? Well said. It's the logistics camp in Idyll. We don't need too many powerful soldiers to fight Tufan. The logistics camp is enough. Be quick. The audience continued to shout, and the sound of money being thrown increased. It wasn't just the people around Blind Huang who were excited. Even the people who had just entered and heard the last few words were equally excited. Boss Chi, listen, there's another person talking about Cuckoo. This one seems to be better than the others. This time, Cuckoo has really done a great service to the country. Good job killing her. What does Boss Chi think? Among the people who had just entered, one of them asked the person who was standing in front of the crowd. The corner of Boss Chi's mouth twitched. Wei Wei nodded. Good. What a good demoness, Cuckoo. What a good Idyll logistics camp. Good job killing her. Chapter 635. Chi Dongjia and his group went straight to the third floor, chose a private room with a view of the river, and sat down. They casually ordered a few dishes, waited for them to be served, and waved the waiter away. Only then did Chi Dongjia retract his gaze from the rolling water outside, and said to everyone, we have to hurry up with the harvest. Otherwise, when others find the opportunity, the money will. Boss Chi didn't finish his sentence, but everyone knew what he meant. If they couldn't harvest enough, they wouldn't get enough money. Someone sitting next to Boss Chi asked worriedly, Boss Chi, what if we can't sell the grain after we harvest it? The autumn harvest is in a few days. Usually we should slow down the harvest. After the autumn harvest, we will continue to harvest. Are you afraid that I don't have enough money? Boss Chi didn't have any room for negotiation. That's not it. The money that Boss Chi is putting out is enough to harvest the grain of several states this year. I'm just worried that it won't be easy to sell. The person who spoke just now kindly reminded him. Boss Chi put on a mysterious smile and said, Of course it won't be easy to sell the grain, but I have a method to turn the grain into something else. When the time comes, I will have to rely on you. Well said. Since Boss Chi has a plan, we will harvest enough grain. As for the higher-ups investigating, if someone investigates, I will do my best. Don't worry, I have already arranged everything. After we harvest the grain, we will all be rich together. Come drink. Boss Chi said confidently to everyone. He raised his cup and drank with everyone. Zhang Zhong was still fishing by the river. He didn't catch a single big fish, only a few small fish. He estimated that 4 people's fish would be enough to make fish soup for the little ones. If they wanted to eat braised fish, they would have to wait until they were big enough. Old Man Pai changed the bait once. With a shake of his wrist, he threw the hook into the river. He looked at the children bathing upstream and said to Zhang Zhong, Yongcheng, since we are going to fish together, shouldn't we go upstream? Lord Bai, you must be joking. It's just a fish, so there's no need to go so far. The middle reaches will do. There should be some children in the middle reaches who can't resist the temptation and help the fish hide. They might even release the fish that is hooked. Lord Bai, you just need to control the children in the middle reaches. I'll do the work in the lower reaches. Zhang Zhong said to Old Man Bai as he retracted his pole and pinched the hook in his hand. The bait had been eaten and the fish had not been caught. Old Man Pai looked at Zhang Zhong in surprise. When did Zhang Zhong learn to speak like this? Moreover, from their words, it could be heard that the Zhang family didn't care at all this time. They seemed to be very confident. Could it be that the Tubo people were so easy to deal with? Or could it be that the ability of the master of the Zhang family had reached an unfathomable level? Zhang Zhong seemed to have seen through Old Man Pai's thoughts and said, This time, Xiao Bao will be in charge. It's time for him to train. It's just that the Shuayun is flying here and there. I'm afraid that it will delay the battle over there. When the other hunters come over, send a few more. Although they can't be compared to the Shuayun, they can still help to check the enemy's situation. Xiao Bao? He's in charge. Could it be? Old Man Pai was shocked. He was worried that something had happened to the master of the Zhang family. Did he feel that he couldn't do it and wanted to test Cuckoo and Xiaobao in advance? Once the two kids succeed, the expert can rest assured and leave. This wouldn't do. The master had done a lot for the Tang Empire. No matter what, he had to have a title and be conferred a title. Moreover, he hadn't met the master yet. Even if he met him once, it would be fine. Zhang Zhong understood the meaning behind Old Man Pai's words and sighed in his heart. How could there be a master? The masters of the Zhang family and Wang family had all gone to the front line. If there really was a master, why would Xiaobao be in charge from so far away? He had to fight with Cuckoo and take care of this place at the same time. Only Xiaobao and Cuckoo could do this. If it were someone else, even an adult wouldn't be able to bear it, let alone a child. Old Man Pai saw that Zhang Zhong didn't want to continue, so he had to change the topic. He asked, half of the Yongqing family's inner court has gone to Pengzhou. Do you still need more people? Yes, but the people in Lord Bai and Lord Yao's family are not enough. This time we need to transfer people from Sanshui County. Mi Fan and Han Xianfeng are urgently transferred over. Together with Su Si, the three of them are enough to deal with the Tibetans. Zhang Zhong didn't expect that in his son's letter, he would ask for those two people to be transferred over. What was the use of those two people? Old Man Pai knew of Su Si. Back then, he was in charge of setting the price at the market beside the Wang family's river. In the past, the Gu family was a very ordinary farmer in Zhuangzi. He wasn't valued by the Gu family. However, when it came to the Zhang family, it was different. He never did anything that was assigned to him. The Zhang family's ability to judge people was also extraordinary. Today, the two people that were transferred over through the military station were perhaps the other trump cards of the Zhang family, just like Zhang Ying and Zhang Lang. Who would have thought that the two people sent by Song Jinggong would be so powerful? Not to mention searching for people, just the two of them, 2 dogs and 1 eagle, were able to find Xiaobao and Cuckoo. They actually killed 290 Tibetans and seized 285 horses. Looking at the situation, the other two people were also transferred over at the crucial time. Otherwise, why didn't they transfer Song Jinggong? Song Jinggong was in charge of a region, so there was no doubt about his ability. Who knew how many more people like him the Zhang family had that hadn't been revealed? They were really well hidden. Old Man Yao listened at the side. What he was most concerned about was whether this mission was really controlled by Xiaobao from a distance. If they really won, when Xiaobao and Cuckoo returned, would they continue to be idle like they had nothing to do? Or would they be given actual positions? Xiaobao and Cuckoo were second-level nominal positions, one for civil affairs and one for military affairs. Zhang Zhong's position should also be raised. Otherwise, it wouldn't be right for an adult to have a lower position than his 9-year-old son. Old Man Yao thought about it and really couldn't understand at the moment. He might as well let others worry about it. He asked Zhang Zhong, Yongqing, when will the real fishing begin? It's better to have a detailed plan. We'll start right away. I'll give you the plan later. Xiaobao has already done it. Please help me take a look and see if there's anything missing. The child is still young, so he might not have thought it through. Zhang Zhong's goal was achieved, so he didn't want to fish anymore. He put away his pole and left. He even said a few words of modesty for his son. He didn't believe that the 3 old men would be able to see any problems with his son's plan. He had already looked at it, but he didn't understand it. He would have to wait for the next plan to come back. 2 pigeons spread their wings and flew towards the capital to get Mi Fan and Han Xianfeng. When they passed by the capital, they had to ask if anything had happened in the imperial court. There probably weren't any rewards, so those people were too stingy. The sky gradually darkened, and the wind grew stronger. Wang Wan went to observe the terrain last night. She didn't find any good ideas. The 2 tribes of Tubo actually kept a little distance from each other. They didn't even send out scouts. They just followed the traces left behind. If they wanted to attack, it was like facing a turtle. They couldn't find a place to attack. Wang Wan didn't want to use less than 10,000 people to charge head-on. Although she hoped that others would use normal methods to fight, she didn't like it. There were too many people who died in a head-on battle. Unless they were forced to the point of no return, they could only face the enemy head-on. Otherwise, she preferred to plan slowly. She would eat a little bit at a time. When she ate more than enough, it would be enough. She would use guerrilla warfare to fight. Of course, at this time, if there were dozens of large copper cannons on the naval gunboats, she would dare to attack the Tubo cavalry under the cover of the cannons. With the cannons moving forward and the cavalry's speed, it would be too easy for them to charge at the infantry. Now that the sky had darkened and the wind had gotten stronger, Wang Wan went to observe the terrain again. Opportunity. Any change in the weather was an opportunity for the troops in battle. It just depended on whether they could grasp it. According to their current speed, they would arrive at the desert in 4 days. Wang Wan stood on a very small hill and observed the terrain. Zhang Xiaobao squatted beside her and dug for wild vegetables. There weren't many wild vegetables in the autumn, but it couldn't be compared to the ones in the spring. Zhang Xiaobao said more than once that if it was spring, he could make a small root vegetable for Wang Wan. It would taste very fresh with cat's ear soup. Wang Wan looked for a while and was very disappointed. The hill was too short, and it was difficult to grasp the overall situation. She turned her head and shouted to Zhang Ying, who was at the foot of the hill, "Call Shui Yun over. Catch me and take me to the sky to have a look." Zhang Ying was a little worried, but he still made a net with a leather rope and sent it to Wang Wan. He let Wang Wan put it on, tied a piece of wood to the leather rope, and called Shui Yun to catch her. Shui Yun was indeed obedient and did what it was told. It didn't know how it communicated with Zhang Ying, but it flew up and slowly swooped down to catch Wang Wan. Wang Wan held the binoculars in one hand and grabbed Shui Yun's foot with the other. She was afraid that Shui Yun would be happy and let go of its claws. One person and one eagle flew up and hovered high in the sky. Wang Wan's field of vision widened, and she looked left and right happily. After a while, she put away the binoculars, took out a piece of cloth from her body, and threw it out. Zhang Ying saw the cloth and whistled. Shui Yun slowly swooped down again. When Wang Wan's foot was about to touch the ground, it let go of its claws. Wang Wan rolled forward with the force, jumped up and said to Zhang Xiaobao, "It's flying. They're flying. How satisfying. If I were to raise 100 of these eagles, wouldn't I be able to form an aerial unit? I think that if we can find a way to find more than 100 Shui Yun, it's better to spend the energy on research. Maybe we can even build an airplane. Have you thought of how to scheme against people?" Zhang Xiaobao looked at the Shui Yun that had landed on Zhang Ying's shoulder, and was rubbing its head against his face. He dispelled Wang Wan's unrealistic fantasy. "I thought of it. It's going to rain, and the traces on the ground will be obvious when it rains. We were prepared and knew in advance that we were going to the desert, so we brought a lot of supplies. There are 40,000 people in Tubo, and they didn't steal as many horses as we did. How much food can they bring with them? Didn't you want to use salt to pickle vegetables? Now we have it." Wang Wan patted the dust on her body and said to Zhang Xiaobao, Chapter 636. Kimukahu brought his men and followed the others. After a few days of traveling, he didn't notice anything. He didn't know why, but the calmer the Tang army was, the more worried he got. It was just like when the Tang army was hiding in the village. Once it was ready, when the time was right, the Tang army would give him a ruthless blow. He could be considered to have met that female general, Wan Wan. Perhaps the little girl had been able to fantasize about all of those strategies. Thinking back to it, it was like a dream. Now that there was no movement for a few days, it was probably going to be troublesome. And the sky was also dark. Could it be that they wanted to attack in the rain? No, he had to find someone to talk to in case he fell for it. After thinking about it, Kimukahu went to Lufututa. Lufututa was busy with the cavalry training. When he saw Kimukahu, he seemed a little embarrassed. He pulled Kimukahu into the tent. "Lufututa, don't tell me you want to follow what I said and send light cavalry to attack the Tang army? No, it's too late now." "Definitely not. If you want to attack, you have to wait for the rain to stop. That little brat likes to use all kinds of terrain and weather to attack. She can find an opportunity when there's fog, or when the weather is hot. Listen to me, don't think about attacking her now. Continue to shrink your troops and slow down your marching speed. Increase the distance between you and her. After the rain passes, we can talk about other tactics. Also, it's best to send someone to take care of the logistics. Kimukahu knew what the other party was thinking. He wanted to bring the cavalry out, but the other party didn't agree. Now he was actually doing it secretly. Sai, it's fine if you want to take credit, but not now. Lufututa was pointed out by others and felt a little embarrassed. When he heard that Kimukahu stopped him, he thought that Kimukahu was afraid that he would succeed. In the end, he gave the idea for nothing. If he listened to him, he would be a fool. When he said it was fine, why couldn't he do it? I have my own plans for this matter. Are you used to living here? Why don't we get someone to carry you around? That will be more comfortable. Lufututa looked around and said to Kimukahu. He seemed to be very friendly, but his attitude of keeping people at arm's length was obvious. I'm fine. Thank you for your concern, Lufututa. Since that's the case, I'll head back first. Seeing that the other party didn't listen to him, Muka couldn't do anything. If it were him, he wouldn't listen to others either. Unfortunately, he didn't have enough people in his camp and couldn't do anything. Otherwise, he would think of something. After sending Kamyuk out of the tent and watching him leave, Lufututa laughed coldly and said to the people beside him, "Did you see that? This is a power struggle. He pretends to be kind, but in fact he is not. Pass down the order. Tonight, the cavalry will attack in the rain." The heavy rain made the originally dry ground muddy. It was just evening, and the sky was so dark that it was hard to see far away. Lufututa's cavalry was ready. At this moment, the people in front of the team who were carefully observing the track suddenly ran over. The Tang army increased their speed. From the distance between the horses' footprints and the people's footprints, especially the people's footprints, the distance between every 2 steps was larger, indicating that they were running. Ran away? Chase after them. Order everyone to run and chase after them. The cavalry don't attack first. It will waste the horses in the rain. Hearing that the Tang army increased their speed, Lufututa immediately ordered the troops to follow. When it was midnight, Lufututa realized that the Tang army had not stopped. Lufututa could not let the soldiers continue chasing. He did not want the Tang army to take advantage of the fact that they were exhausted to get down from their horses. Lufututa's troops were already too far away from the other troops, and it would be easy for something to happen. Lufututa's troops stopped, but the Tang army continued to rush forward. After running for another 2 hours, more than 2,000 people were left to rest. The cavalry and horses went elsewhere. The road was difficult, and the cavalry couldn't increase their speed. The horses were almost exhausted, but the troops continued to force their way forward. Luckily, they didn't need to carry many people, and most of them had already dismounted and left. When the Tibetan team continued to move forward at dawn, the logistics team that was not too far behind also arrived at the hill where Wangwan stood yesterday. In the heavy rain, the people from the logistics team moved even slower, but they did not dare to waste time and could only force their way forward. Yesterday, they had to put up a cloth to block the rain for the rations and take care of the horses. All of them were exhausted. They only rested for 4 hours at night, and they had to hurry again at dawn. What if something happened in front of them and they pushed the blame to the logistics troops? Sunny rode in the front and looked back at his troops. Many of the 2,000 men nodded after every step they took, as if they wanted to sleep. He looked at the ditches in front of him and the potholes in front of him. He did not know whether to curse the heavens or the troops in front of him for moving so fast. Sunny did not know whether to curse the heavens or the troops in front of him. Hurry up, it'll be fine when we catch up with the troops in front. What are we doing here? It's all potholes. Carry people, carry the carts over. Are we just waiting for the horses to pull the carts over? Sang Er shouted at his men when he saw the carts getting stuck in the potholes one after another. The 2,000 soldiers in charge of transporting the carts had to pull at the front and push at the back. They had to lift and carry the carts so that the troops could move forward slowly. It took them an hour to get past the hill. Just like that, the troops behind them and their carts got stuck in the potholes from time to time. After another 15 minutes, all the carts reached a relatively flat area. The 2,000 logistics troops were so tired that they couldn't stand properly. Sang Er had no choice but to order, "Rest for an hour. Damn the weather. Fix the broken carts quickly. Don't waste our time." Hearing his words, everyone relaxed at the same time. But at that moment, countless people rushed out from behind the hill they had just passed. Fire arrows rained down on the carts. When some of the carts were on fire and some were smoking, the usual rain of arrows fell on the 2,000 logistics troops. The logisticians were stunned by the sudden attack, and Sunny Ring was the first to be shot dead. More than 10 arrows pierced into his body at almost the same time. After losing their commander and being ambushed, the logisticians started to fight on their own. Some of them crouched on the ground to avoid the rain of arrows, some picked up their weapons and ran towards the direction where the arrows came from, some ran in another direction, and some just stood there, waiting to be killed. Wang Wan personally commanded the troops to attack. There were more than 6,000 people here. They hid for a while before the rain started. The horses continued to run. In the rain, it was hard to see the depth of the horses' hooves. It was impossible to determine how many things were on the horses' hooves. With the rain washing away, the traces disappeared. She waited for the rain for this opportunity. As expected, the main force of the Tubo troops went to chase after their horses. The logistics troops had to stay behind. How much food was sent to 40,000 people at once? When Lufatuda was still looking for a chance to send his cavalry to attack, the sky behind them was covered in thick smoke. Even from so far away they could clearly see the sky formed by the smoke. Another Tubo troop that was slightly slower was the first to notice the situation. The first thought that came to their mind was that the logistics troops were attacked by the enemy. They sent out 2,000 cavalrymen to check. In the end, the wind was blowing in their direction. The people who came over were all in tears from the smoke. Not only were the people uncomfortable, but the horses couldn't stand it either. However, they had to come. When they rushed over, they saw the burning carts and the corpses of their brothers. Some of the corpses were very far away. They ran for more than 2 miles, but they were still killed in the same place. Blood mixed with mud. The thick smell of blood was nauseating. They didn't see the enemy and didn't know where the enemy was. The leader of the cavalrymen shouted, "Put out the fire. Use the mud on the ground to cover the carts. Don't let all the food burn up." The 2,000 cavalrymen endured the pain in their eyes and dismounted from their horses. They used their hands to throw the mud mixed with blood onto the smoking carts. After throwing the mud for a while, Wang Wan led her men out from the back of the mountain. She also shot a rain of arrows to protect the new cavalrymen. The water cloud continued to hover in the sky, in charge of monitoring the movements of the other Tubo troops. This time, the cavalrymen weren't completely wiped out. More than 200 of them rode back and escaped. In the end, they encountered more than 600 people and 8,000 horses of the Tang army. The Tang army seemed to have been prepared. A large portion of the 200 people were killed and the rest took a detour. The Tang army didn't chase after them. They rushed to Wang Wan's side and let Wang Wan lead the men to chase after the escaping cavalrymen. After chasing for a while, the water cloud fell. The troops changed their direction again, and went through the empty space between the two Tubo troops. This made Wang Wan very surprised. She initially planned to take a detour and go around the two Tubo troops together. She didn't expect Lufatuda to forcefully move his troops and create some distance between them. This saved them a lot of time. Lufatuda looked at the thick smoke behind him and was dumbfounded. Not to mention the general, even a normal soldier would understand what was going on. The army provisions were being attacked, and they had to scrimp and save for their meals. Camus also stood there and looked at the smoke in the sky. He didn't feel surprised at all. He muttered, "I was right? The demon fiend is the demon fiend. We can't give her any chance. She can make use of anything. The terrain, the weather, and the enemy's formation. When dealing with her, we can't think of how to defeat her. Instead, we have to think of how to defend ourselves. Even if our troops are 4 times stronger than her, we have to defend like an iron bucket. As long as we can force her away, we will win." On the other side, Mumukushu's men had already returned to the camp. He told them about the attack and the ambush on his side. Mumukushu immediately ordered his men to defend and gave up on extinguishing the fire. He was also afraid that once they split up, they would be tricked by that little girl. Lufatuda sent men back to take a look and didn't rush forward. He was prepared to wait for the other division to come and discuss what to do next. Now they weren't forcing the Tang army to enter the desert. Instead, they were thinking of how to prevent the Tang army from killing them. Chapter 637. The world of mortals is bitter, disputes never stop, flowers bloom and wilt. Autumn comes and leaves fall cold and hot. If one does not admit defeat, how can there be evergreen trees, dancing in the clouds, looking back on the past to remember? Kill. The moment the order was given, countless arrows flew towards the Tubo Luftuta's tribe. The Tubo people immediately raised their shields and hid behind, hoping that they were not the unlucky ones. Ever since Luftuta's army was ambushed yesterday, he had already dispelled the idea of sending cavalry to the front to attack the Tang army. Their morale was gone, and no matter how they thought about it, they could not win against the Tang army. The fire and passion in the soldiers had also been extinguished. They clearly knew that there was a lass in the Tang army that humiliated the entire country, but so what? There was nothing they could do. They could not chase after her, they could not hit her. As long as they tried to trick her, there would be a loophole in their side. The lass would not let go of any opportunity. They could still hold on if they hid, but once the battle formation changed, they would definitely be used. At most, the troops would advance a little faster, and in the end the logistics would be ambushed. The Tubo soldiers felt very sad. It was not that they were afraid of death and did not charge, but as a general, you should at least give them a chance to charge. It felt like they had met a strong opponent when playing polo. The opponent was clearly one man and one horse breaking through, but they could only retreat step by step. Even if the ball was right in front of them, they did not dare to use their poles. If they used their poles, they would be overtaken. Luftutta saw that the opponent would take away hundreds of people every time they attacked, and he felt more and more frustrated. He could not think of a solution, so he could only look for Kamuku who was more accurate with his words. Kamuku, whose heart had long been numb. He watched the Tang army come and go like the wind. Every time the enemy attacked, they would attack from the direction of the wind. Whenever they were happy, they would come back and shoot another round. If there was a weakness before yesterday, it was that the Tang army did not have enough horses. There had to be someone running below. After Mumuhushu's cavalry was dealt with yesterday, the Tang army still had some men and horses left. The supplies that they sent over were all taken away by the Tang army. The bows that the Tang army used were from Tubo, the arrows that they used were from Tubo, the rice that they ate was from Tubo, and the horses that they rode were from Tubo. There was no need to continue this war. In the future, as long as the Tang Empire had Kuku, Tubo would not dare to invade their borders. Just as Kamu and Ku, who were sighing in their hearts that they were the ones who made Wangwan famous, Lufututa came looking for them. Kamuku, who, I regret not listening to you. The Tang army is indeed good at sneak attacks. If we were to face them head-on, I am confident that I can defeat them. Quick, give me an idea. Lufututa was still unwilling to admit that he could not win against the enemy's general. He attributed the victory to the enemy's sneak attack tactics, and hoped that Kamuku who could give him a good idea. Let's retreat and let the stronger people come over. Or we can withdraw our troops and enter the city to defend. Our 40,000 men are not a match for her. If she really leads the Tang army to face us head-on, we won't be able to return even if we want to. According to the new information, Pengzhou is preparing to leave the pass at any time. There won't be any reinforcements from other places. There won't be many people escorting the provisions. If they can sneak attack once, they can do it again. Unless one group follows behind and the other group supports the supply team. Let's retreat. Both groups retreat at the same time. Don't give her a chance. Kamuku who analyzed the situation in front of them and gave such an idea. Of course, Lufututa was unwilling to listen. We are being attacked by less than 10,000 Tang soldiers and we have to abandon our defenses? If the Tang army sends out 100,000 soldiers, won't our Tubo be destroyed? No, definitely not. Wouldn't that be admitting to a little girl that we Tubo won't dare to do it again? Kamuku, who, are you scared after being beaten? Yes, I'm afraid. I really don't dare to fight against them unless I have a more elite team and use soldiers to make up for the lack of generals. If you still want to fight against them, then stop and wait for the logistics. Let them shoot. When they run out of arrows, then slowly follow behind them. The two units must not be separated. Kamuku who nodded in agreement. He was very clear that he could not compare to the little girl in terms of scheming. To deal with such an opponent, they could only rely on numbers and steadily advance. They must not have any devious thoughts. The Tubo people were hesitating. Wangwan was much more relaxed. Everyone had a horse and they could fight and run as they wished. Although the enemy scolded them and said that they did not have the guts, so what? She was still a child. Adults should not lower themselves to the same level as a child and should protect her. Zhang Xiaobao was still in charge of cooking. He caught a few wild boars and let him use the salt he stole to marinate them. He was going to make ham and bring it back for his family to try. He wanted to see if the taste of the Tubo wild boar's ham was different. After seeing Wang Wan happily studying the map, he kept it and said to Wang Wan, I am going to write a letter back and ask the imperial court to help spread the news that the one commanding the front lines is not the 9-year-old Wang Wan but someone else. Wang Wan is just trying to anger the Tubo army. What do you think? Sure, I know. You don't want to push me up now. If that happens, our peaceful life will be gone. At the very least, we can't let the people talk about us all the time. Don't worry, I don't want to be Wu Zetian or Empress Dowager Xiao. My goal is not to be like them, dancing on the tip of the blade and contending with the various powers. I want to hide behind and make Tang Empire stronger and stronger together with you. Some people like to be heroes and some people are willing to create heroes. I belong to the latter. What about you? When we go back, what do you want to do? Wang Wan understood the meaning behind Zhang Xiaobao's words, and she agreed. If one pushed one's position too high, one would sometimes lose sight of one's original ideals. In order to maintain one's position, one would have to pay too great a price. At that time, although many people still knew of one's abilities, the people of the Great Tang would gradually forget about it, and one would be able to return to their original lives. Me? I haven't thought about it yet. I want to make a county with you. I will be the county magistrate and you will be the chief registrar. Let's wait for a few years. When Tang Empire's economy is prosperous, we will find a new way. Wars with foreign countries are inevitable. Otherwise, when the material life is good, people's pursuit will increase and the internal pressure will be too great. Zhang Xiaobao did not have a definite plan. He needed to wait for the imperial court's attitude to make a decision. Wang Wan nodded. Then when the time comes, we will find a poor county and slowly govern it. I don't think it will work. Let's talk about the future later. First, help me analyze the current situation. They are like turtles. They are too annoying. The weather gradually turned cold. The people who worked in the fields began to prepare their tools, waiting for the autumn harvest. The commoners in Idyll's stronghold were much more relaxed than the commoners outside. There was only so much land that could be used for farming. They would be content if they collected enough to eat for a year. There was no shortage of salt at home, and there was enough cloth to make clothes. The children had more candy in their hands, and the women had more jewelry. The men organized to go to the snow mountain with Governor Zhang to build a ski resort. The businessmen who came to participate in the investment also sent money to Idyll. Each of them was given a membership card. With this card, they could enjoy a 50% discount. Spending was spending, profit was profit. They could not enjoy it for free just because they had invested money. Originally, not many people really wanted to come to this place for recreation. The sport of skiing had not yet become popular. Who would be willing to come to the mountain to suffer from the cold? They could not stand the reputation of Bai Go and Yao Chong. They also wanted to make friends with Zhang Zhong. However, when they saw people demonstrating skis and sledges on the mountain, and the laughter of adults and children, they felt that this place was not bad. Especially when they were tired, they could take a hot bath and have someone massage them. Their whole body would feel comfortable from inside out. At the same time, there was a place for hunting in the ski resort. There were many kinds of wild animals on the mountain. With the local people protecting them, there was no need to worry about accidentally dying. Zhang Zhong organized people to build a restaurant at the top of the mountain and at the bottom of the mountain. It was in the form of a self-service restaurant. There were corresponding well-enclosed suites for people to discuss secret matters. He did not even refuse the people from the brothel when they came to cooperate. The ski resort also adopted a membership system. It seemed that people who came to the resort would not just pay the fee to play. They had to be members first. After paying the annual fee, part of it would be used to manage the resort, and part of it would be deducted when they played. The membership card was also different from other places. It was made of tortoiseshell, and it showed one's identity when one held it in one's hand. Zhang Zhong also asked people to secretly advertise that the really rich and the really rich people would not like to look for lively places to eat, drink, and play like bumpkins. Zhang Zhong himself liked to go to lively places very much. He did not want the so-called identity that was flattered. He was independent of the circle that others had set for him, and he was aloof. Then Zhang Zhong started to build a winery. It was a very big winery. Before the wine was brewed, the reputation would be built first. A lot of money was spent. He did not need to recruit people who had experience in brewing wine. He first trained them, and during the training process he would also get a salary. Naturally, the winery needed to have things to brew wine. Zhang Zhong and Wang raised a lot of money and prepared to buy food. After the autumn harvest, they first talked to the people and ordered the food. The price was much higher than the current price. A bushel of wheat was 30 copper coins, and a bushel of rice was 45 copper coins. The price of other things was also increased. But at this time the imperial court suddenly issued an imperial edict, ordering Zhang Zhong to prepare money, to build roads from Idyll to Idyll, and to strengthen and widen the roads connecting to Idyll. It was not known who leaked this imperial edict, but many people knew about it. Zhang Zhong was dumbfounded. He immediately stopped the winery and began to transfer money from other places to Idyll. It was estimated that it would take at least 4 months to escort the grain from the capital to Idyll. Zhang Zhong was helpless. He borrowed money from merchants and used his family's assets as collateral. At the same time, he went to talk to the people who had agreed to harvest the autumn harvest. He delayed it until 1 month after the autumn harvest. He bought the grain at the price of 35 copper coins per bushel of wheat and 50 copper coins per bushel of rice. He also wrote a written agreement. If the people did not accept the grain at that time, he would compensate the people half of the money and use the ski resort shares as collateral. Chapter 638. On the road from the capital to Jiannanlai, 3 riders were riding through the dust. One of them looked much weaker. He was leaning on the horse and his face was pale. The other 2 were a man and a woman. They looked much better than this person. They didn't look tired, and their bodies followed the rhythm of the horse, making it easier for the horse to run. However, the 3 of them didn't speak. They urged their horses forward. After an hour they came to a stop and changed horses. The one with the weaker physique sat down on the ground. He tried to struggle to stand up but to no avail. He said to the other 2, "You guys go first. I can't take it anymore. I need to take a break. You guys can make arrangements when you arrive. You're a man, but you're not as good as a woman. You're holding us up." The woman said to the man sitting on the ground, "Look at you. How are you a woman? When you do things you're a tomboy. I told you not to come, but you insisted. It's useless." The man was not happy. "Han Xianfeng, is this how you treat someone who saved your life? If I didn't use acupuncture and medicine to save you, you'd be dead. You need to know how to repay kindness." The woman turned her head and said to Han Xianfeng. Han Xianfeng let out a long sigh. There was nothing he could do, so he didn't hurry. He sat down next to that person and said, "Mi Fan, I'll remember this. If there's a chance in the future, I'll force you to train. Tell me, how many things have you delayed? I don't know why the young master called you here. Am I good? Yesterday when we were on the road I reminded you first. That's why you didn't fall into the ditch. You're ungrateful." Mi Fan panted heavily for a while. She rubbed her hand gently on her leg and grimaced in pain as she drank some water. "Yes, ungrateful. Han Xianfeng, we're talking about you. You don't even care about saving your life. Are you still a man?" The woman next to him found an opportunity to scold Han Xianfeng. Han Xianfeng looked up at the sky and said helplessly, "Jiu Meilong, I beg you. Don't keep talking about saving my life. I was just tired from the boat race." That was San Shui County's Shao Luo Shui. "How could I die? Not to mention exhaustion. Even if he was really injured, would there not be a good doctor? I managed to dock the boat with great difficulty and wanted to find a car to take me to get a massage, but you jumped out from the side. Without saying anything, you pushed me to the ground and stabbed me with several needles. I don't even know where you got the medicine and forced it down my mouth. Nonsense, I'm a famous doctor. A famous doctor who is proficient in both the pen and the sword. I picked the medicine myself and specially used it to treat fainting spells. My medical skills are definitely high, otherwise, how could you be awake when I was performing acupuncture on you? Jo Mei's cold face reddened slightly, but she continued to argue. I want to close my eyes and rest for a while. You're pricking me so much that my whole body hurts. How can I not wake up? And that medicine, why would it treat fainting? It's more like it's for intestinal blockage. The strength that I saved up after resting with great difficulty was all thrown to the toilet. If your medical skills are high, why don't you go to Huayuan County's Dai Hospital to find a job? Why do you insist on following me? When Han Xianfeng thought about what happened that day, his face turned as pale as Mi Fan's, and his body trembled. It must have left a deep impression on him. Jo Mei touched the bag on her back, which contained her needles and herbs. She said embarrassedly, "Who said that I didn't go to Dai Hospital? But they said that I still needed to practice. They asked me to go to Yawang Mountain to massage others and identify the acupuncture points. I'm a woman, so how can I go there? I wanted to practice slowly. I walked all the way looking for patients and then I met you. I saved you out of kindness, and I heard that you were close to the Zhang family. I was hoping that you would arrange for me to go to Huayuan Hospital when you repay my kindness. Who would have thought that you're such an ungrateful person? Fine, I'm scared of you. Don't mention saving lives. I don't have the ability to arrange for you to go to Dai Hospital. They don't hire people based on personal relationships. With your medical skills, even if you sneak in, how many patients will you kill, let alone take a normal exam? Han Xianfeng was tortured to death. If Zhou Meilong wasn't alone and didn't have a family, and if she hadn't been observed by the Zhang family's spies, and if they hadn't found out that she had other skills, they would never have allowed her to follow them. This woman was indeed good-looking, especially her figure. If she didn't always wear a dirt gray robe and change into other colors, many men would definitely yearn for her. But this woman was always muddle-headed. Her so-called medical skills could have become a nickname in some county in the past, but she insisted on going to Huayuan County and Sanshui County to treat patients. What were those two places for? Sanshui County was the foundation of the Zhang family and Wang family. Han Xianfeng only joined the first family in Linshui County after passing the test. He was the son of an official and didn't give any face during the test. How could the medical standards there be bad? As for Huayuan County's Dai Hospital, it was the pinnacle of the Tang dynasty's medical science. Even the imperial doctors in the palace had to go there frequently to communicate. Every year, they would be tested to decide whether to stay in the palace or not. What could a half-baked doctor like you do in such a place? At this time, Mi Fan said something fair, Mrs. Zhou. Actually, there's nothing wrong with massaging. Doctors shouldn't discriminate between men and women. In the eyes of doctors, there are only healthy people and patients. Dai Hospital wants to give all ordinary doctors a chance. Going there to give massages requires skill. After you go there, remember the acupuncture points clearly. After passing the test, you might have a chance to enter the medical school to study. The research there is unparalleled in the world. This time I didn't want you to come, but when I saw you I suddenly felt that you might have other benefits, so... Xianfeng, look at him. He's flirting with me. Listen to him, he wants to get benefits from me. I'm a woman, what benefits do I have? Won't you help me? Then you're ungrateful. Mi Fan, how could you flirt with Zhou Meiling? Come. Let's get on the horses and have 100 rounds. Han Xianfeng was scared. Before Zhou Meiling could finish, he helped Mi Fan, who had rested for a while, onto a horse. The two rode off first. Zhou Meiling stood where she was, tilting her head and thinking. She also pulled over a horse and mounted it. She was much faster than Han Xianfeng and Mi Fan. After 100 feet, she reacted and shouted, Han Xianfeng, stop right there. How dare you lie to me? What skills do I have to be chosen by me, Fan? Medical skills? Humph, you want to get rid of me? In your dreams. My horse can only run 6 steps in one breath. The one you control can only run 5.5 steps. The distance is about 120 feet. This military horse can run 6 feet per step. In 400 breaths, I'll catch up to you. Maozhou, Tunghua County was a small county. There were not many people coming and going. The local people also lived their own lives. Everyone spent time traveling to the county every day. However, such a small county was always bustling at the middle and beginning of each month. People who came from neighboring counties and from further places all came early because there were a few horse companies here that specialized in buying and selling horses. Whether it was buying or selling horses, if one's eyes were sharp enough and his mouth was sharp enough, he could achieve his goal. There were so many horse companies here. Some were bought from other counties, and some seemed to have appeared out of nowhere. No one knew whether it was because no one was willing to investigate or because they didn't want to. That was how the horse companies in Tunghua County survived. There were dozens of small horse companies, but not 100. Many horse companies didn't have fixed positions. As long as you brought in a dozen horses at one time, others would admit that you were a horse company. There were 4 largest horse companies here. They were named East, West, North and South. The one named East was called Donghua Horse Company, and so were the others. The 4 horse companies competed with each other, but at the same time they worked together. Among them, Donghua Horse Company seemed to be the leader. The owner of Donghua Horse Company was surnamed Yan. It was said that he had fled here 30 years ago. At that time, he was alone with a 6-year-old son. He had the ability to identify horses. At first, he looked after the livestock for the local people. Later, he found horses from other places and sold them here. Little by little, his family business was established. 15 years ago, his son married the daughter of a local rich family, and Donghua Horse Company was established. Over the past 15 years, the Ma Trading Company had grown bigger and bigger. Not only did Master Yin own the business, but he had also taught 3 of his disciples. They had all established their own businesses, and were the owners of the other 3 Ma trading companies. Most outsiders would not know what was going on inside. Identifying a horse was a skill. If you didn't know how to identify a horse, it was obviously a bad one. Even if you spent the money on a good one, no one would refund you. As time passed, more and more people could tell whether a horse was good or bad. Tonghua's 4 family horse company came up with a new strategy. Horse gambling was only open for about 2 hours. In the morning before the sun rose, someone would prepare many horses in the shed. If they liked one, they would pay and take it away. Every horse was the same price, priced at 20 strings of coins. Some people had good eyesight or good luck. They bought a fine horse and became rich overnight. More people bought an ordinary horse or even a sick horse. Ordinary horses had 10 strings of coins, and some had a few strings of coins. They could only pull carriages. As for a sick horse, if it was cured, it could be sold for a little money. If it could not be cured, it was not worth a single cent. Today was the first day of the new moon. Those who came last night or even earlier waited outside the stable before dawn, hoping that they would be lucky enough to get a good horse. The people of the horse company were also prepared. They looked at the sky and gave orders. The road to the stable was opened, and everyone rushed in like a tide. Chapter 639. As soon as this voice was heard, the people picking the horses inside became anxious. They were afraid that the good horses they had their eyes on would be snatched away. Those who did not have the financial resources and courage to participate in the horse gambling curiously sized up the person, wanting to see who had the financial resources to buy all the horses. Horse gambling was not just a few dozen horses for people to choose from. Every time there were 1,000 horses, no more and no less. If one wanted to buy all of them, they would have to take out 20,000 strings of coins. 2 years ago, someone did this once. He thought that he could get a few fine horses, but in the end he spent 20,000 strings of coins. There was not a single fine horse among the 1,000 horses. In the end, He sold the 1,000 horses and only got back 5,000 strings of coins. He could not afford to lose more than that. At that time, this person came to ask why there were no fine horses. The people of the horse trading company were not afraid of trouble. No one said that there must be a fine horse among the horses. No one forced anyone to buy a horse. If there was no fine horse, there would be no fine horse. However, there were always horses with a value of more than 50 strings of coins. There were also horses with a value of more than 100 strings of coins. Using 20 strings of coins to buy a horse with a value of 100 strings of coins, was it not enough to earn 10 strings of coins? Perhaps there would be a chance for a military horse to appear. It was not bad to give it away. In the end, no one knew what kind of method each person used. The people who bought the horses left dejectedly. The 4 horse trading companies were still standing tall. Some people said that the owner of the horse trading company gave a fine horse to the local officials. Some people said that the owner of the horse trading company had a big backer. There was no conclusion for a while. They did not expect that there would be another person who wanted to buy all the horses today. Everyone had the intention to watch the show. They wanted to see what the final result would be. Usually, the people who bought the horses would immediately watch here to find a good horse trainer. Today, the 2 people on the horses did not know which one was the horse trainer. If the person behind was the owner, then the person in front was naturally the horse trainer. However, the person in front was too young. No one believed that he could judge the horses. Could it be that the owner personally judged the horses? The people who had entered the stable hadn't paid yet, so they naturally couldn't bet on horses anymore. One by one they walked out angrily, their eyes looking at the 2 newcomers. It could be said that they were brimming with killing intent. The big deal was here, and the people of the horse company invited the owner out. There were 4 horse companies and 4 owners. The owner of the East Hua Horse Company looked to be less than 40 years old, while the owners of the other 3 horse companies were slightly older. As for the old owner of the East Hua Horse Company that everyone was looking forward to seeing, he did not appear. Greetings to the 2 of you. Were the 2 of you the ones who wanted to buy all of the horses? Donghua Horse Company's boss Yan cupped his fists and asked. That's right. The person on the front dismounted and turned back to help the person on the back as he answered casually. Everyone looked at the 2 people under the light of the lanterns and found that the 2 people were indeed wearing good clothes. They were wearing Sichuan brocade robes. The person with the identity of the master had a round jade pendant the size of a copper coin on his waist. When the light flashed, it was blood red. If it was not dyed, it would be worth a lot of money. Boss Yin glanced at the 2 people and said, according to the rules, once sold, there is no refund. Have the 2 of you thought about it? I know. Pay up. The owner ordered, and the person next to him took out a luo of flying money from the money bag on his shoulder. There were a total of 20 pieces, and each piece was worth 1,000 strings of coins. After someone checked the flying money and confirmed that there was no mistake, the 4 owners had a trace of a smile on their faces. While writing the receipt, they asked someone to call for the horse driver. It seemed that the 2 people could not drive the horses back themselves, so they could only pay someone to drive them. If it was not too far away, the horse company would arrange for someone to drive the horses. They would not take the money to drive the horses, after all, they were big customers. After ordering someone to bring tea to the best shelter for resting, Boss Yen said to the other party's master, how should I address this honored guest? Do you want to look at the horses first? No need to look at the horses. When the other horse markets open, we will buy enough and take them back together. The owner brushed his robes and placed the jade pendant on his leg. His thumb and index finger naturally touched it, appearing a bit arrogant. Then where does Boss Chun want to go? If it is not too far away, we will immediately arrange for someone to help you. Does Boss Chun want to buy a few horses that are pleasing to your eyes? Yan Dongjia carefully sized up this old Master Chun and asked with a smile, buy. In a while, as long as the price is right, buy all of them. I am preparing to build a horse farm in Luoyin province. If it is not too troublesome, send them there. Oh, it seems that your horse company is not bad. You can help me find other horses that are 30% more expensive than the market price. Buy as many as you have. If there are mules, oxen, donkeys and other livestock, that is fine too. Old Master Chun continued. When the people beside him heard that it was Luoyang province, they realized that it was not too far away. If they slowly drove the horses, they would arrive in half a month. However, they did not understand why this person wanted to buy other livestock. Everyone thought so. Boss Yen also asked, "What is the use of the oxen and mule that Boss Chen wants?" Oxen are to be killed, used to plow the land. Donkeys and mules are naturally used to transport beans. Horses cannot only eat grass. Is there a problem? Boss Chen picked up the teacup and started to drink tea. He began to wait for the other party's reply. Without waiting for Yan Dongjia to speak, one of the people nearby couldn't help but ask, "This old Master Chen, if I have the livestock you want, would I also buy it at 30% more than the market price?" "You? Haha, how many do you have? You can't expect me to follow you everywhere. I don't have much time." "Boss Yen, please excuse me. Boss Chen, don't think that I didn't find many, but there are many people here. If each person found 10, there would be a few thousand of them. Furthermore, how can 10 of them be taken out? However, let me say this first. Now that the price of grain has increased, and the Zhang family in Yi province has taken away a lot of mules, the market price will be expensive. Moreover, it seems that there are people selling them recently. If the time comes, if it is expensive, you can also buy it at 30% more than the market price. You can first write a letter and leave it with the broker as a mortgage. If he doesn't accept it, then you won't have to pay for it. Is that okay?" Boss Chen did not wait for this person to finish his sentence and very magnanimously decided. After he said this, the people around stopped buying horses. Those who sold horses also stopped selling. Since they were going to buy the horses for Boss Chen, it was more important to quickly find other livestock to earn money. Boss Chen seemed to be very happy. He drank a cup of tea and did not mind the unpleasant smell here. He brought his subordinates and walked around. "Go and tell my father that we have a rich family. I am not afraid that he won't be able to afford the blood jade pendant carved with a qilin." Yan Dongjia instructed the person next to him as he followed behind them. When it was noon, Boss Chen bought all the horses for sale here and told them that he would come back to buy them in 2 days. After he left with his subordinates and the people sent by the horse trading company to drive the horses, the head of the 4 biggest horse trading companies in Tunghua County gathered all the managers of the other horse trading companies. When the other horse trading companies arrived at the agreed place, they suddenly found that the boss of the East Horse Trading Company was also there. They all went up to greet him. It was not easy to see this old man. Boss Yen, who rarely showed his face in public, smiled and agreed with everyone. When everyone had arrived, he coughed and was about to speak. The others consciously stopped talking with others and looked at Boss Yen, waiting for him to speak. "Ladies and gentlemen, this old man has gathered all of you here today because of what Boss Chen said. Some of you may know where my horse came from, while some of you may not. But regardless of whether you know or not, I have to say it. This is an opportunity. Even if that Boss Chen doesn't want it in the end, the things he left behind as collateral will be enough for us to make a fortune." The horses of the East Horse Trading Company were indeed secretly transported from elsewhere. Not only the East Horse Trading Company, but the horses of the other 3 major horse trading companies were all like this. It was not easy for the horses to come over, but they came over. However, there is a rule there, which is to first send the money over and then look at the horses. As the saying goes, if there is money, everyone gets it. If such a big business is monopolized by the 4 horse trading companies, I think everyone will feel bad. The 4 horse trading companies will probably be finished. I will stop here. If anyone is willing to use money to buy horses from elsewhere and then sell them, hand over the money first. What kind of horse do you want to buy and how much? You can ask my son. When I am old, my body will not be able to take a few words. Everyone, please eat first. This old man will take his leave. After Boss Yen finished speaking, it was as if his body really could not take it anymore. He was supported and left. Everyone did not care if he was really like that. After all, the path was pointed out. As for whether they left or not, it was not up to them to care. Some people immediately wanted to go home to get the money. Some people were afraid that Boss Chen was a swindler. What if he did not pawn enough to buy too many horses? What should they do then? Some people felt that they should borrow some money. The 4 major horse trading companies were very rich. If they did not have enough money, they would not be able to earn much. Who knew when such an opportunity would appear again? Each of them had different thoughts, so they drank absent-mindedly. After a quick meal they dispersed. The owners of the other 3 horse shops stayed behind to discuss with their masters how many horses they wanted to buy this time. While the Tang people were worried about the horses, the Tubo people were also worried about the horses. In the end, Lufutuda didn't want to retreat. After thinking hard for a day, he came up with a good idea. That was to let the Tang army eat up a logistics team. This team wasn't from the main force anyway, so it didn't matter if they died a little. He wanted to form a cavalry team with at least 10,000 horses. He estimated that he would pull away from Mumukushu and wait for the logistics team to be eaten up. Then, these 10,000 horses would be able to move out. The nearest wind was always from the north. He was also going north. At that time, the cavalry would have the advantage of the wind direction. He did not believe that the little girl would be able to guess his plan. However, he did not have horses. He went to Mumukushu and asked. They could only send out 2,000 horses. Originally, they had 5,000. They needed to leave 1,000 to guard the camp. The other 2,000, needless to say, were all under the Tang army. If he did not protect the camp, he could still gather 5,000. If he had 8,000 against 9,000, it would not be reliable. Mumukushu was still thinking about how to gather the cavalry when Wangwan led the 9,000 light cavalry to the back of the 2 tribes. However, they did not attack the Tubo logistics team. Instead, they went straight south and cut down trees to pave a road by the Ruashui River. The cavalry in the logistics team panicked and immediately returned to report this news to the Tubo headquarters. At this time, the Tubo people realized that Cuckoo, this 9-year-old girl, was very difficult to deal with. They had no choice but to organize people to stop them. This was to prevent them from crossing the mountains and entering the Tubo territory. 3 days later, the official army of Pengzhou was also mobilized. When the 2,000-strong Mo Dao unit appeared, the Tubo people became nervous. The cavalry did not dare to charge recklessly. The scouts ran around. Then the Pengzhou cavalry appeared. The 20,000 cavalry roared and headed straight for the Ruashui River. The Tubo army had already set up their formation on the other side of the Ruashui River. They wanted to stop the Tang army at the Ruashui River. If the 3 tribes were still there and were not lured away, the Tubo people would not be so anxious. After setting up the formation, Zhang Zhong let Li Sun, Old Man Pai and Old Man Yao lead the troops. Together with the people gathered from the local area, they arrived at Pengzhou together. In Pengzhou, they used the imperial edict to get the military rights of the newly recruited soldiers. A total of 40,000 people were mobilized. They carried their weapons and rushed out of Kuguan. Another 10,000 people secretly left behind. They took a detour and headed towards the villages with underground tunnels. At this time there were countless eagles flying in the sky. The eagle trainers who had just arrived at Sanshui County did not even rest before joining the troops. When Zhang Zhong led the people out, they immediately spread out and started to harvest the Tubo autumn grain. When Wang Wan led the troops to harass the Tubo army and slowly arrived at the desert, Zhang Zhong had already harvested all the grain and retreated back to Pengzhou. When the people of Pengzhou saw the carriages of grain being transported back, they opened their eyes wide and were speechless. Although it was still a little bit away from the best time to ripen, it was already not bad. They all thought that since the Zhang family's child was very daring, Zhang Zhong, the provincial governor, was also not small. He actually went to harvest the grain under the enemy's nose. Very impressive. Old Man Pai and the other 2 were also very surprised. When Zhang Zhong wanted to borrow the troops, they thought that Zhang Zhong was worried about the child at home and wanted to go and help. They even tried to persuade him. In the end, they did not manage to persuade him. Li Sun acted as if he wanted to see the world burn and followed him to harvest the grain. Not to mention that they did not expect this at the beginning. Even Zhang Zhong was the same. He rode on his horse for 2 days before he stopped wasting time. It was mainly because of the opportunity created by his son and daughter-in-law. He did not know how the 2 children were able to calculate this when they were being chased over there. They actually led the cavalry in a large circle and acted as if they were going to turn around and shake off the two Tubo troops. It gave people the feeling that they were going to cooperate with the Tang army to attack the Tubo cavalry. It meant that they were going to forcefully cross the mountain and the Tubo army could only send troops over. Wang Wan used her mobility to turn around, and then went back to restrain the other two troops. As for the Tubo army, they had already harvested all the grain. The MO soldiers and cavalry all went back and waited there. It was unknown if they were looking for another opportunity to attack. How are they still children? They are clearly famous generals. Their deployment of troops is superb. If I had known, I would have followed them to take a look. Old Man Chong rubbed his hands excitedly and said to Old Man Pai and Old Man Yao. Old Man Pai was also in a daze. He, who had seen all kinds of storms in his life, had to admit that Wang Wan had shocked him too much. It seemed that there were not many people in the world who could use tactics to such an extent. Not to mention tactics, she could even cooperate with Peng Zhou to achieve strategic results. Old Man Yao blinked twice and said, "What did the emperor say in the message?" He said that he wanted to see Cuckoo's ability and whether or not she could adjust her tactics at any time after making a move here. He said that the situation is not constant and that a famous general must have this kind of ability. It seems that the emperor doesn't need to worry. Cuckoo is not an ordinary famous general. Any general who can cooperate with her will feel very comfortable. They will act according to the situation without the slightest intention of being forced. Furthermore, they made an additional arrangement and harvested the grain at the Ruoshui River in Tubo. That's right. It seems that we have to follow the Zhang family's wishes and hide Cuckoo among the ordinary people. Such a general will not be casually deployed in the future. When there is no general available, when will we send Cuckoo out and decide the situation with one battle? This sword is really too sharp, so people are reluctant to use it. Old Man Pai looked to the west and said. The people in charge of the joint harvest in Idyll also returned to the stronghold excitedly, and talked about what happened there. Because of the existence of Zhang Zhong, they knew more than ordinary people. They told the story of the provincial governor's daughter-in-law with exaggerated details. The chiefs of each stronghold breathed a sigh of relief and immediately ordered people to send the good things in the stronghold to Zhang Zhong's brother. At this time they really regarded Zhang Zhong as a brother. Not only did Zhang Zhong call them brothers, but also Zhang Zhong's peaceful attitude towards them. In the past, they thought that Zhang Zhong was afraid that they would be difficult to manage, so he did this. Now it seemed that this was not the case at all. Zhang Zhong's daughter-in-law could lead the Tang army to victory. Would she be afraid of the 4,000 people like the other officials who came here before? According to the people who understood military affairs, a person who could use the army like this was definitely in existence like the god of war. In other words, if Zhang Zhong wanted to, he could turn his face and all the strongholds in Idyll would be finished. A good person, a good brother, a good official. The people in the strongholds finally acknowledged Zhang Zhong's identity as an official and acknowledged the Tang Empire's absolute rule. The Tubo people also knew about the situation, but they could not think of a good solution. What they regretted the most was that they arranged for the spies to destroy the embankment at Wangjiang. If not, Cuckoo and her family were still in Suzhou. How could Li Longji send them to manage the logistics? If they did not manage the logistics, Cuckoo would not have come out of seclusion to take over when Guotu was beaten to the point where he could not fight back. If she did not take over, how could they lose so many soldiers? How could they be like now, being led around by others? A famous general of a generation might be silent forever, and not be discovered. They would not have to be so embarrassed to be pointed at by others and asked if they still dared to do so. Lufutuda and Mumu Hushu were also questioned. They were asked how they let the Tang army escape. Lufutuda couldn't say anything when he was being questioned. He had only eaten one meal today and was still hungry. When Wang Wan's troops returned, they didn't forget to attack another group of troops that were transporting the provisions. How is this still Tubo territory? This is her backyard. If she wants to fight, she can play, and if she wants to leave, she can come and go like the wind. I finally fucking understand what the Great Tang's art of war is about. Wind, forest, fire, and mountain. What a good wind, forest, fire, and mountain. She's used it so mysteriously. Lufutuda slapped his thigh and said with a face full of grief and anger. The messenger beside him carefully controlled his breathing, so that the general wouldn't vent his anger on him. The messenger didn't say anything, but Lufututa still wanted to find him and asked, "Tell me, am I useless? Didn't they also get their grain taken away? Weren't they also hiding at the Ruoshui River and defending?" They were afraid that the Tang army's Mo saber would not allow them to mobilize their troops. Am I not afraid of the light cavalry of the Tang army? Am I able to command the troops like my own arms? If they weren't worried about the demon fiend, why would they send troops to defend? If they weren't on guard, why wouldn't they send troops to attack the harvesting troops led by Zhangzhong and Idyll? Tell me, do you blame me? Say it. No, it's because the demon fiend is too powerful. All is fair in war. Who knows what she will do with her men? The messenger was scared out of his wits. He was afraid that the general would kill him if he was unhappy. Yes, it's because she's too powerful. Whoever killed the people of Wangjiang and came up with the idea should take responsibility. She shouldn't have looked for me. I'm not that capable. But now I know how she knows about our army's formation. Eagle, it's the eagle flying in the sky. I want to shoot it down too, right? Lufututa's current state was very unstable. His words were also very jumpy. Yes, I heard that after the Tang army moved out they moved back and forth. There were countless eagles in the sky. No matter what the Tubo army did, the other party would be able to react accordingly. It's that eagle that helped. There have been eagles flying in the sky for a few days now. It's that eagle that told the Tang army our formation. The messenger carefully moved towards the entrance of the tent and said softly. Lufututa didn't have the intention to kill the messenger. Instead, he slapped his thigh and said, "Yes, it's the eagle. It's the eagle that gave the message. Then tell me, if we need light cavalry to deal with the light cavalry, what do we need to deal with the eagle?" Use bows and arrows. The messenger replied. No, right, we also need to use the eagle. It flies so high, can you shoot it? Send someone back and ask if there are any eagle trainers in Tubo. Don't use normal hunting eagles. It's useless. Those that fly in the sky are definitely not normal eagles. How much money does Ijo provincial governor Zhangzhong have? He can send a normal eagle to his daughter-in-law. Find me an eagle. Once I have an eagle, I won't be afraid of her anymore. At least I won't be ambushed by her. Don't you think so? Lufututa denied the messenger's thoughts and said his own judgment. Yes, it's an eagle against an eagle. Then I'll go out now to pass the order? The messenger found an opportunity to leave. Go. Chapter 640. The autumn harvest had finally arrived. Those who had land at home prepared their tools. Those who had enough manpower would do the work themselves, and those who didn't would ask others for help. The price of grain rose again and again. With the receipt from the Zhang family's winery, the price of a bushel of wheat rose to 35 copper coins, and the price of rice also rose to 50 copper coins. This made the other people who were collecting grain miserable. Either the Zhang family collected all of the grain, or they raised the price at a later date. Now, the Zhang family had approached everyone who had land, but the Zhang family didn't have the money and insisted on waiting until a month after the autumn harvest. As a result, they couldn't lower the price of the grain they collected. Those who had grain, even if they hadn't been approached by the Zhang family, learned their lesson. They didn't sell and waited for the price to rise. Even if their families were in urgent need of money, they wouldn't budge. Even though the cost of purchasing grain had increased by half, there was still no market. The most infuriating thing was that the grain that Zhangzhong had plundered was put in Chongping warehouse in Ijo. He only paid the workers who helped to harvest, but didn't give them any grain. The wages were very low, only 10 copper coins per person per day. Even so, those idiots who followed him to harvest felt that they had taken advantage of him, saying that it was an army operation. What made it even more helpless was that the officials of the neighboring prefectures didn't say anything. They didn't even try to help Chongpingsong and Wing Prefecture. Wasn't it just him being the Jiannan prefect and the Jiannan inspector? Wasn't it just him dealing with a bunch of officials? Now that he was no longer one of them, was there a need for them to be so afraid of him? As the price of grain increased, so did the price of livestock. This was especially true in autumn, when there was less grass to feed. A horse that used to cost 5 strings of coins couldn't even be bought with 8 strings of coins now. The only thing that didn't change much was the price of salt. Zhang Zhong had specially consulted with the officials of the neighboring prefectures, and no one knew what he said to them. The price of salt stabilized, and so did the price of oil, which only rose by a little less than 10%. At this moment, the entire Jiannan prefecture was like a small wooden house before a storm, giving the intelligent people a feeling that they were floating. The merchants who were collecting grain had no choice but to look for Master Qi, who was working with them. "Boss Qi, we can't get enough grain. The price is getting higher and higher. The commoners are reluctant to sell." A grain merchant said to Boss Qi, "If the price is high, then buy it at a high price. Wheat is 35 copper coins a bushel. Rice is 50 copper coins a bushel. Buy as much as you can." Boss Qi gave the same price as Zhang Zhong. All the merchants shook their heads. Another merchant opened his mouth and said, "Boss Qi, we can't accept the same price. The commoners are willing to keep it for Zhang Zhong. They all say that the Zhang family's children are fighting at the front lines. We can't disappoint the heroes." Then raise the price. 40 copper coins for wheat and 55 copper coins for rice. I'll write a letter and discuss with someone. We'll charge you according to this price first. More money will be delivered soon. Qi Dongjia's heart was filled with both joy and worry. He was happy because the price of grain was too high, but he was worried because the time limit for the goods he had conned was approaching. Originally, he thought that this sum of money would be enough to buy more grain and livestock, as well as increase the price of goods in Jiannan. But now that the price had increased, the amount of goods that needed to be bought had not reached the required amount. The plan drawn up by the higher-ups made him feel that something was wrong. Just where did it go wrong? Qi Dongjia couldn't figure it out, so he could only write a letter and have someone secretly send it away. Zhang Zhong could also feel the current situation in Jiannan, but he wasn't in a hurry. He had already made the necessary arrangements and was only waiting for the final blow. During this process, a portion of the commoners would suffer losses, but that didn't matter. He would be able to compensate them before the end. As for the merchants who had suffered even greater losses, he didn't care. Each and every one of these merchants were smart. How could they not understand how much damage their actions would cause? Since they were willing to go against their conscience and add fuel to the fire, they had to be prepared to bear the consequences. If the merchants at the border were not dealt with properly, they might be in danger in the future. Zhang Zhong, who was waiting for the situation to develop, began to work hard to perfect the ski resort. Old Man Pai and the other two also followed behind Zhang Zhong to help. They were faintly anticipating what the Zhang family hadn't told them yet. It wasn't only Zhang Zhong and the others who were busy. Xiao Bei and the others were also very busy. The original 3-story house was too short, and the children grew quickly. They put away the house made of agarwood and put it into the large warehouse. Then they made a 3-story house made of ginkgo wood for them. This time the height of each story was 5 feet. If it was a little higher, it would be the same height as the door. Not long after it was finished, the glass was installed, and a new batch of toys were changed. There was also a carpet and other protective measures inside, but there was no bedding. Xiao Bei and the others, under the guidance of the big brother's young man, found straw to fill the house. They also asked the servants to dig a tunnel under the house. The tunnel under the house could be pulled open. The tunnel could be pulled open now, and the tunnel could be pulled open before. It could be used to escape at a critical moment. Most of the straw in the house was secretly sent into the tunnel by Xiao Bei and the others. Chang Hu's son and daughter were also busy. Unfortunately, the two of them spoke late. Until now, they could only say 1 or 2 simple words, and their expressions were still unclear. Even so, Chang Hu was very happy. He spoke earlier than his 2 older children. The oldest one could only speak when he was 2.5 years old. Of course, compared to the children of the Zhang family and Wang family, they couldn't be compared. In his opinion, this was because the parents were powerful, and the children were also powerful. Only those who knew the truth would understand that this was the difference between nutrition and infant education. Xiaobei and the rest were already able to express their thoughts to others very well. They could understand simple stories and could even ask questions when others were telling stories. The servant girl in charge of taking care of them clearly knew that they had stuffed all the straw into the tunnel below. At night, when they weren't paying attention, she took the opportunity to spread the straw properly. However, she still pretended not to see. It took Xiaobei and the rest 2 days to finally pave all the tunnels with straw. On this day, Xiaobei happily pulled the maidservant to stand outside the house while they entered the house and closed the curtains from the inside. They jogged to the bottom and squeezed out. They circled the outside and stood behind the maidservant. They nudged the maidservant and widened their eyes to wait for the maidservant's reaction. The servant girl was still looking at the house attentively. After her clothes were pulled, she turned her head and was shocked. "Ah, Xiaobei, why are you outside?" "Ha ha ha ha." Xiaobei and the others laughed proudly. They shook their little heads and refused to say anything. Changhu's 2 children wanted to say something, but they couldn't. They could only worry. "Xiaobei, tell me quickly. What's going on? You're so powerful." The servant girl continued to ask curiously. "T-tunnel warfare. Ambush. Millions of divine soldiers. Do you still dare to fight bad guys with Big Brother and Big Sister?" Xiaobei waved his little fist and said, "We don't dare. We don't dare anymore. Xiaobei is so powerful." The servant girl pretended to be scared. "Ha ha ha." Xiaobei laughed happily again. As he laughed, he suddenly pouted and said, "Why aren't they back yet?" The servant girl's expression also darkened. She comforted him and said, "Soon, soon. When little young master and little miss come back, they will bring delicious food for Xiaobei." "No. Beat the bad guys and come back alive." Xiaobei seemed to know that there was danger over there. He only had one request. Wang Wan and Zhang Xiaobao still didn't know that their younger brothers and sisters at home were thinking about them. They had already entered the desert and stayed there for a day. The 2 Tibetan soldiers who followed them didn't enter. They kept a certain distance to ensure the depth of the defense line. On the one hand, they waited for supplies from behind. On the other hand, they wanted to see when exactly Wang Wan would come out. Wang Wan and Zhang Xiaobao weren't in a hurry at all. The desert here wasn't as unbearable as other places. There were grasslands, lakes, and mini oases. It would be strange if the 2 of them died of thirst or hunger in this desert. "Xiaobao, I used to come here when I was traveling. They sold pearls. These are lake pearls. Find more and bring them back for Xiaobei and the others to play with. They can also be used as cosmetics." "Ah, this is desert cistanche, also known as desert cistanche. Quick, pick them. There are so many of them. Take them back and cook them. They don't dare to chase after us." Wang Wan, who treated entering the desert as a tourist trip, found something good. Desert cistanche, a real wild desert cistanche. She picked them while calling Zhang Xiaobao, who was still looking at them on the way here. "I'm not looking at them. I'm thinking that the desert here is good. If one day we can build a railway here, we can make use of the resources here. When can we completely annex Tibet?" Zhang Xiaobao looked at the yellow sand in front of him and felt very comfortable. He came over to pick the desert cistanche and said. Wang Wan looked at the resting soldiers and said, "If I want to fight, I can fight. Economic war, unconventional war. Give me another 100,000 Tang soldiers, and I will be able to take over the entire Tubo in 2 years. Your economic war is good, but you don't gain much from it. You cheated our own merchants and the Tubo people, but the loss of Tubo people is not too big. I have to help you. Whether it is political or economic means, in the end they need military force to maintain. The Jews are so powerful and have good means of making money, but they also spend money to hunt down the specific people who killed them. They can't destroy other people's country, and military force is not enough. The oil country wants to fight an economic war with other developed countries, but in the end, it can only be replaced by other countries' troops. I will help you to improve the plan and let Tibet suffer more losses. That's fine too. My plan this time can only swallow the money sent by the Tubo Empire. If you can lead troops to help, I can hurt the Tubo Empire. War is always the most direct method to solve conflicts." Zhang Xiaobao didn't refuse. After all, he couldn't lead troops to fight. Wang Wan picked all the desert cistanche in front of her and spread it on the sand to dry. She also lay on the sand, narrowed her eyes, touched her face and said, "After days of fighting, my skin is not good. I have to go back early to take care of it. What else? I can't come here for nothing. There are all kinds of medicinal herbs. You can't be a temporary truce and let the soldiers help you pick the herbs, right?" Zhang Xiaobao flipped the sand around him and found no insects or shelled things. He gave up the idea of looking for earth snails to make soup. "I need to take a few days to train the troops. I have been fighting while running, so I don't have time. The next battle will be the real test. Get up, let's move forward." When I have children in the future, I will find Xiaobao and Cuckoo to teach. Whatever they know, I will learn. Then, other than Xiaobei and the others, no one can compare. After leaving the land, the people brought by Old Man Yao began to feel uncomfortable again. They were not like Old Man Pai's people, who had experienced many things. When they went to Xuzhou, they were already uncomfortable for a long time. Fortunately, they were able to reach the shore in the capital at that time. Now they were in a hurry. As long as the ship's supplies were enough, they would move forward without stopping. The ones who were least affected were the little ones. Usually, their range of activities was not large. They were always in the yard. Occasionally, they would be carried out for a walk. They also brought their houses, which were specially set aside for them on the ship. There was a small swimming pool, a sandpile, and any toy they got could be played for a long time. Moreover, they were provided with a lot of toys and games. The most important thing was that they could play with their brothers and sisters for a while every day. When the fleet was less than a month away from the destination, the fastest ship in the vanguard had already arrived at Chengdu. The people on the ship immediately got busy as soon as they came ashore. This time the person in charge was Su Si, the person from the Gu family who bought the firecrackers in Sanshui County. Once he came ashore with a heavy responsibility, he found 2 people to protect him and rode quickly in the direction of Shuangliu County. Su Si rode on the horse with a determined expression. The young master and young lady of the main family had given a death order. This time they could only succeed and could not fail. Since the main family directly handed the money to him at the market by the small bridge in Sanshui County, he was determined to serve the main family to the death. People said that an army was trained for 1,000 days to be used in a single moment. He had been raised for a few years, so it was time to use it. The small things he did before were all training. This time he heard from the members of the Zero team that this was a matter of life and death. No matter what, he had to do it well. The 3 riders only took 2 hours to arrive at the county yamen of Shuangliu County. Shuangliu County was also a middle county. There were yamen runners standing at the entrance. As soon as the 3 riders arrived, the yamen runner's eyes fell on the 3 people who jumped off the horse. "Who are you?" One of the 4 yamen runners who were guarding the door stood out and asked loudly with his eyes wide open. Su Si took out something from his arms and handed it over. "Give this to your county magistrate Tian and registrar Wang. I want to see them immediately." "You little fool. You want to see them? Tell me your name." The yamen runner didn't take the thing in Su Si's hand at all. It was a piece of cloth with a very awkward-looking rice seedling embroidered on it. The rice seedling actually had arms and was holding a sign with the word Ji written on it. Su Si didn't have time to waste with the yamen runner. He directly replied, "My name is Su Si. I'm from the inner courtyard of the Zhang family. I'm a 5-star deacon." "What inner courtyard deacon? The master is busy. Wait at the gatehouse. Look at the broken thing you're holding. Even if you're anxious, you can't write the wrong words." The yamen runner curled his lips and straightforwardly refused. "This isn't about being anxious. It's about being anxious. Quickly report it. Otherwise, if something happens, you can't bear the responsibility." "Humph." Su Si's face became serious and threatened. The yamen runner still wanted to say something, but another yamen runner behind him pulled him back. This yamen runner was afraid of delaying things. The county magistrate was different from the previous ones. He did things neatly and efficiently. If there was really an urgent matter that delayed things, then he would be guilty. It was fine to report it. If he didn't know who the county magistrate was, then it wouldn't be too late to deal with him. The Yamen runner held back his anger and said, "Wait." Then he hurried in. When he arrived at the study, the county magistrate Tian Tian was discussing something with the registrar Wang Wang. Hearing the knock on the door, Tian frowned and said, "Come in. Sir, there's a person outside who wants to see you and the registrar Wang. This is what he brought." His tone is harsh. It seems that he doesn't take you seriously at all. The Yamen runner took his revenge and presented the thing in his hand as he spoke. When the county magistrate Tian and the registrar Wang saw the cloth embroidered with the rice seedling, they were stunned. This thing was very familiar to them. It was a rice seedling, but the words on it made them blush. What happened to the head of the Zhang family? Why did he take out a rice seedling to test them? It was obvious that he didn't trust the two of them. "Sir, don't be angry. I can see that they are not good people. I'll go and deal with them now." The Yamen runner who was observing the two thought that they were angry and immediately added, "Bullshit. Open the main door for me. The Yamen runners are waiting on both sides to welcome me. Am I Tian Tian an ungrateful person? Someone bring me the clothes I wore when I was studying. I'm the strong grass." County Magistrate Tian scolded the Yamen runner and immediately started to prepare. Wang Wang was stunned and said, "Brother Tian, can you lend me some extra clothes? There's no time." Half an hour later, Su Si and the other two people who were waiting outside the Yamen saw the door creak open. Two people walked out. They were wearing civilian clothes embroidered with the words, Jianjia. They looked at each other. One of them said, "General, we can't accept this. Why is the Sanshui Zhang family's eagle better than ours? We'll go back immediately and find other eagle trainers to take revenge." "Don't just go and find them. When you come over, avoid them. Don't fly. If you can't accept it, do you think I can? Even if you can't accept it, you have to bear with it. Come over here and take care of this eagle. I'll count it as a great achievement. If you want to take care of the eagles above, you have to find at least 5. No, 10 of them. And they have to be careful. You have to work together and take care of each other. Rest for a while before you leave." Lufutuda warned them. He was afraid that the two men would act rashly. If that happened, they had already fallen into the enemy's hands. The two of them still wanted to say something, but they were dragged away by the messenger. As they walked away, the messenger said, "Listen to the general's words. Bring at least 10 of them and come over quietly. It's best to train them over there first and work together in battle. Don't be greedy and act rashly. Don't you see that the general has close to 40,000 people here in formation?" The two eagle trainers were scared by this. They nodded and followed the soldier to rest. After walking for a while, they reacted. Was there a need for this? 40,000 men were scared to this extent? The Grand Pass was long and winding. Carriages were about to overturn when they were on the road. Horses were about to fall into the stream when they stepped on it. Mi Fan and the other two men who came from the capital finally experienced the danger of Shudao. They rode their horses. In the beginning, they carefully stuck to the side of the mountain. Now they dismounted from their horses and walked slowly. Mi Fan and Han Xianfeng glanced at the stream below them from time to time. They shivered and held the rock wall beside them. Zhou Meiling was brave. She walked in the middle and felt the wind blowing from the stream. She also felt the unique humidity of Taotao's water. "Come over here. Don't fall down." Han Xianfeng had shouted more than once. Every time, Zhou Meiling would smile and tell them that she was not afraid. She said that she was 5 feet tall. Every step was about 2 feet and 6 inches. She was 4 feet and 7 inches away from the side. Even if she missed a step, she would not fall down. She asked the two men to continue riding. She said that since the horse was used to this path, it would know how to control itself. The two men did not dare to do anything. Fortunately, Mi Fan did not feel uncomfortable. She knew that Zhou Meiling would not be in danger for the time being. Zhou Meiling walked and said to the two men discontentedly, "Are you still men? If you keep moving, it will be too late by the time you reach the place." "No, Mi Fan is here. If it's really late, he'll feel uncomfortable. It has nothing to do with whether he's a man or not. I'm just afraid of heights. It's not the critical moment yet. If I accidentally hurt myself, the Zhang family will be angry. The Zhang family values people with ability very much. but they also take care of people without ability. Han Xianfeng would not go over. He wanted to dig his hand into the stone. You still have the ability? You are rowing to death. You are waiting for me to save you. Without me, you will beg for help from heaven and earth. I beg you now. Stop talking. If you say something ungrateful again, I will jump down. Han Xianfeng was tortured. Are you good at swimming? If you're lucky, you can give it a try. At the very least, when you jump out, you have to land about 6 feet away. Otherwise, you won't be able to fall into the water and will crash to your death. Let me calculate for you. From here to the surface of the water, it's about. Get on the horse and go. We are in a hurry. Mi Fan, please. If you feel uncomfortable, tell me. Han Xianfeng gathered his courage and got on the horse. Mi Fan was helpless. She also climbed on the horse. She took a deep breath and said, "Let's do it. We will reach the place tomorrow." Zhang Zhong and Idyll had just arranged the general affairs of the ski resort and handed it over to the people in the inner yard. He began to lead the people who had nothing to do to build the road. The imperial edict was not fake. If it was built, it had to be built. It was not paid. Fortunately, it gave a policy. If it was used well, it would make a lot of money. Zhang Zhong was not worried about this. He believed in his son's ability. With the policy given, it would be easy to earn a few times the amount of money needed to build the road. The road was made of sand and stones. The key places were reinforced with cement to prevent the road from being damaged. There were also a few eagles to help. When there was a need for a suspension bridge, the eagles would send one end of the rope over. Then there would be people pulling on the rope. The rope gradually thickened and was much faster than before. When there were stones in the middle of the road or stones that could easily slide, they would use explosives to blow them up. The explosives were placed on the side as if there was no danger. There was also no one guarding nearby. It gave people the feeling that they could take it at any time. Zhang Zhong also hoped that someone would take it. However, he was disappointed. Even if people knew how powerful this thing was, no one touched it, let alone steal it for research. The ambushers were always there. And so was the cement that had not been mixed. The working people did not care about the conspiracy or political purpose of the road building. They could do the work. After the construction period, they could get money. Moreover, it would be convenient for them to go back and forth in the future. They worked very hard. The food was not bad. Zhang Zhong was also in charge of providing worn-out clothes and tools. The people felt that this kind of life was not bad. However, they did not know that under the calm surface, there were enemies and allies on another level. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.